And we are live. Welcome to Tonight in America. I'm your host, Dante Jones. I want to welcome you back here to Tonight in America on this Monday, the 5th of January. It is 9:01 p.m. I'm a little late coming on the air. Took a little hour. I was getting ready for the show and I had to get me something to eat first before I came on the air. But thank you guys for joining me tonight. Honestly speaking, uh, usually I change my time slot around, and I was supposed to be live on the air on 11 p.m. this morning, but I overslept. Of course, I was a little tired, so that's why I decided to go live tonight at 8. And tomorrow I'm going to be doing a chill stream. Probably going to be the only chill stream of the week, depending on how I feel. So that one's going to be a banger. That one's going to be like maybe 6 hours tomorrow. Give you guys like a 6 hour chill stream of me reacting to some stuff where I was going to see what's going on in the world besides politics. But we have a lot to cover today. Our feature story of the night, we are breaking down how Maduro's capture reshapes the reshapes Venezuela and the impact that it has on the country, quite frankly. And for the most part, I mean, like, we already know how it's gonna go. You mean the Trump administration very much activated the Monroe Doctrine. If you don't know, it's America doctrination to spread our basically our influence in the Western Hemisphere. And as you know, all the countries that are in the Western Hemisphere, they're all aligned for the most part with America. They are under America's thumb. So whenever there's foreign intervention from countries like, say, China and Russia, who are our competitors, we are to react quickly to make sure all these countries are at the thumb or at the I had to, damn, I had another point in my head. Pretty much they're at our will. They are to bend the knee to America, and they're not to do business with China or Russia. So we activated the Monroe Doctrine, and as you know, we captured Maduro at his home in Venezuela in the dawn of the nighttime when everyone was pretty much resting, and he let his guard down, of course. But the United States, of course, had to cause a diversion for military of to be able to be distracted enough long enough so they can go in and take Maduro and his wife and bring him back to the United States to be charged and trialed. So all this happened on Saturday night going into Sunday. Well, actually happened on Friday night going into Saturday. It was a long process. It was a very long process. And of course, I was up late and I was literally just about to go to sleep. And then this literally came out of nowhere. And I literally had to go live. And I stayed on for like an hour. If you didn't see that stream, go check it out. Of course, we have a couple of other stories we're going to cover. We'll cover 4 stories tonight in total. First one we're going to cover is J.D. Vance's house was invaded and attacked by some far leftists. We're going to talk about the protests that's going on currently in Iran, and then we will also talk about what was my other story? Oh yeah, that one, protests in Iran. Oh yeah, and we also will be talking about Tim Walz stepped down today from running for his re-election in Minnesota. He announced today at a press conference that he was stepping down and he will not run again for re-election. I'm guessing because all the fraud that's happened right now in Minnesota in the past couple of weeks, all the big news, and then Nick Shirley going out there and conducting his investigation and finding way more fraud than we are pretty much aware of, like from trusted sources already. We've confirmed at best 9 billion, but according to Nick Shirley's investigation, this is over $100 billion of fraud. Now, of course, these are unconfirmed reports. I don't want to go out there and just say a bunch of stuff that hasn't been secondhandly confirmed by trusted sources just yet. This was done through Nick Shirley's private and personal investigation. So that's what I will say right now. But anyways, I want to remind you to smash the like button and leave a comment. Let me know how you like today's show. Of course, today is going to be a very long show, I guess you could say. Well, I'll try to speed through most of the stuff. because I'm kind of a little bit tired. But I got my energy drink right here. I got a Celsius. But let's just go ahead and jump into our first news story of the day. As you can see right here, this is the police investigating incident at JD Vance's house. Now, of course, JD Vance also tweeted about this too as well, because the media, a lot of news outlets, were doxing his address afterwards. They showed where the perpetrator tried to break in through the window, and to actually to show how the perpetrator, how damaged the window was, they doxed his address. Basically, they showed a picture of his house, basically allowing more people to possibly go and terrorize his residence, which is insane to me that mainstream media would do this. But again, most of these are left-leaning medias. So of course they would literally put his address out there for another guy to go and commit another act against him and his family and put his life in danger. So, but thankfully the family was not home. They were going to, they already made it to Washington, D.C. already. But this is scary to know that if they were home, God knows what would have happened.
But I do want to move on now to some breaking news that we are following on this Monday morning. Take a look at this, a social media post courtesy of TMZ as we follow some developments having to do with Vice President JD Vance. It says that JD Vance's Ohio home windows broken in incident, one person taken into custody. We do have some footage from that incident earlier on today that was brought to us by several of our partners that are covering this story intently. TMZ, though, goes on to say this: Vice President JD Vance had a frightening incident happen overnight at his Ohio home, and one person is now in custody. The chief of communications for the Secret Service told TMZ, quote, an adult male was taken into custody by the Cincinnati Police Department after being detained by U.S. Secret Service personnel for causing property damage, including breaking windows on the exterior of a personal residence associated with the vice president. That same agent said that the home was unoccupied at the time of the incident and that the vice president and his family were not in Ohio. A local news outlet there did obtain the images of some of those damaged windows of that property. And TMZ goes on to report that a source with direct knowledge told them it's unclear whether the suspect was trying to break in or vandalize the property. Moving forward, the man will be interviewed by Secret Service agents to learn more of his intentions. They also added that the U.S. Secret Service is coordinating with the Cincinnati Police Department, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is charging decisions are being reviewed. I also want to put up this, a social media post from the New York Post, as they are covering the story closely as well. One person arrested after windows broken at JD Vance's Cincinnati home. Now, this is a developing story, so we only have some preliminary information at this time. We are still working to get some more images, and my producer is gathering some of that image that we have from the scene earlier on today. Oh, and my producer just told me that we also have a statement. I'm going to put it up here. Taking a look from this entire situation, courtesy of that Secret Service spokesperson who also spoke with TMZ, it said, quote, an adult male was taken into custody by the Cincinnati Police Department.
I think they said this person also was one of them, a transformer. So I believe this is confirmed that this person was transitioning from a male to female. So this is not helping that community's stance right now. It's not looking good for that said community. And we all know that community is the LGBTQ. Of course, they have to always choose violence, never words. They never want to debate, but they want to go and call you a fascist and try to slay you. This is literally insane to me. Like, these people literally want to kill you just for having a difference of opinion than them, or just not agreeing with their degeneracy.
After being detained by U.S. Secret Service personnel for causing property damage, including breaking windows on the exterior of a personal residence associated with the vice president. Shortly after midnight on Monday, January 5th, the man was physically detained by Secret Service agents assigned to the vice president's home. The residence was unoccupied at the time of the incident, and the vice president and his family were not in Ohio. Finally, he says the U.S. Secret Service is coordinating with the Cincinnati Police Department and the U.S. Attorney's Office as charging decisions are renewed. Again, that is according to the Secret Service agent that was there and is also taking part in the investigation into that matter.
Okay. Well, I just want to get that one out the way first. So we covered that one right quick. So let's go ahead. Let's jump into Tim Walz resigning from re-election. He's dropping out from re-election bid. So Minnesota Gov Tim Walz says he is dropping re-election bid. This is from NBC News. The announcement comes amid heightened scrutiny of the state's handling of alleged child care fraud. Senator Amy Klobuchar is now considering a bid for governor. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz said in a statement Monday that he is, bring this up a little bit closer for you guys so you guys can see. There you go. Minnesota Gov Tim Walz said in a statement Monday that he is ending his re-election bid and will not seek a third term. Walz, the 2024 Democratic vice presidential nominee, cited heightened attention on fraud allegations in Minnesota, adding that the political gamesmanship we're seeing from Republicans is only making that fight harder to win. Before I continue on, this is just like it's a common sense of like blaming Trump for your own actions and not taking accountability. Like, bro, the fraud is happening in your state. This has nothing to do with Trump. There's nothing to do with Republicans. You have to take your own responsibility. Like, you need to go and handle this problem right now because it's a bad look for you. It's a bad look for your administration. It's a bad look for anyone that's involved in Minneapolis right now. Jacob Fry is being looked at bad. A lot of your employees, everyone around you. And you're the governor. This is your state. You need to take responsibility for this and handle your own responsibility. So of you resigning right now, yes, I could tell because you're under a lot of scrutiny. But at the same time, this is your fault. Okay? You need to handle this fraud. You need to take care of this fraud. You need to wipe out this fraud right now. And you going around blaming Republicans for this, saying that people like Nick Shirley, an independent journalist, going around, snooping around, is not helping that fight at all. Actually, it's bringing more light to that fight. Actually, it's bringing more awareness to the problem. And we need to weed out that problem and basically just get rid of it. And I'm not saying we need to execute nobody. No, we just need to deport people. We just need to send any Somalis back to Somalia, get them out the country. So let's see, where was I at? But as I reflected on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all, he said. Every minute I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the clinics who prey on our deficits. So I decided to step out of the race. Let others worry about the election while I focus on the work, Walz said. The surprise announcement coming just months after Walz had confirmed he planned on running again, sent a political shockwave through the state and creates a key vacancy at the top of its government. Walz faced no serious primary threat and had been the favorite to win re-election later this year. Well, of course, we already know how he's going to win. The Somali community is fully backing him or whatever because he's taking up for them and running cover each time he can to defend him and say, don't put the blame on the community. Don't put the blame on the single community. It's one thing to say that it's not all Somalians that commit fraud in America. That just goes without saying. But majority of the fraud that's going on in places like Minnesota and Ohio are from said community, the Somalian community. And we need to call this out and weed it out. And we need to get rid of the problem. So it says right here, Senator Amy Klobuchar, Democrat, Minnesota, is seriously considering a run for governor after Walz's announcement. A source close to the Senate told NBC News. The source said Klobuchar is receiving outreach from people encouraging her to run. Oh, gee, I wonder from who, but that she has not made a decision. Klobuchar would not be up for re-election until 2030 if she stayed in the Senate. So I got one from CNN and I got one from Fox News. So of course I lean right, but I mean, I'm gonna be very objective right now. So our Glad's gonna show you both perspectives right now.
Major breaking political news out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tim Walz will not seek re-election as governor, and what a fall from grace this has been for him. You might recall in the spring of 2023, he pushed through several progressive ideas to the state legislature that caught the attention of Barack Obama, who went to Twitter to give his endorsement for the programs, which eventually caught the attention of people like Kamala Harris, who chose him to be her running mate as the vice president. Introduced in Chicago at the convention in August of last year, a debate that was an absolute disaster with J.D. Vance at one point called himself a knucklehead, but after reportedly billions of dollars have been stolen from taxpayers, by way of the state of Minnesota, Tim Walz says he will not seek a third term. what a remarkable 2 years in the national spotlight has been for him, Dana.
And Walz hit Trump in his announcement. He said Donald Trump and his allies in Washington, in St. Paul, and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in America to raise a family. Now, okay, what else has been happening in this last month? Well, you have the discovery that there has been incredible amounts of fraud. And I think 98% of the people arrested are Somalis who are immigrants there in the state that were taking COVID funds and basically and Medicaid funds and stealing them from the American people under his watch or his lack of watch. And now remember, Kamala Harris chooses him as the vice presidential choice partly because he couldn't conceivably upstage her. She says in her book that she didn't want to go with Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, because he was Jewish. She actually says this, okay? And then she goes with Tim Walz, and he was a disaster from beginning to end. He also has a lot of confidence in him.
The reason why she didn't go with Shapiro's because, I mean, it's not a good time right now, especially with the genocide that was going on in Israel. To have a Jew run with you as your vice president nominee, so it's just not a good look, you know. So your choice in trying to choose Shapiro, she was right to actually not choose him because for that very reason. I mean, I'm be completely honest right now, and I'm not defending Kamala Harris or saying that, hey, if she chose someone better for the position, she actually had no chance. I mean, let's just keep it real. Let's be completely honest. Kamala Harris would have never, no matter what she would have done different, she still would have never won, because the problem is Trump was almost assassinated and he survived. That's the main issue the Dems had to run into, and that's why they lost. Because Trump went out there and he survived an assassination on his life with two, actually. And of course, with that being said, it's obvious he was going to win. So you could stake whatever you want. You could try whatever you want. Trump was going to win no matter what.
Himself, but I think that it was very clear to him after he had some discussions over the weekend that he would lose. He was a drag on the Democratic Party nationally, and the best thing that he could have done for the party, actually, and probably for him and his family, is to take this action today, which is to decide not to run for re-election.
So the initial reporting suggests $1 billion has been stolen. Since then, that number's gone higher.
It's higher.
How high, we don't know where it ends, and there are suggestions that it could be similar in other states. Mary Catherine Ham joins us now with an initial reaction. MK, good morning to you. What do you think? Tim Walz?
Well, I was reliably told that he was a great fraud fighter, and that in fact the fraud was minimal or not happening, so I'm confused about how it suddenly became a fatal blow to his campaign. And I'm actually not confused, because the fact is that the numbers were gigantic. This is perhaps unprecedented amounts of fraud, and he does have to answer for it because he was on watch the entire time. And I think it's unlikely, given the scale, that anyone who had power in the Democratic Party at this time, of which the Somali community that was engaged in this is a core constituency, didn't know about it, or at least turn a very blind eye to it. And man, the fall from VP candidate to this is quite spectacular.
You have to wonder what the Minnesota Democrats are thinking, and they might be thinking this. It's reported that he met with Senator Amy Klobuchar over the weekend. And Senator Klobuchar has been trying from Washington, saying back home, you've got to get a handle on all of this. She is considering a run for governor. Perhaps they met and she let him know that he would lose in a primary to her.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think she would be a better choice than Tim Walz. She seems like the kind of person who wouldn't put up with this. But again, I would say anyone who was in power in the state of Minnesota had to know that some of this was going on. Whistleblowers were being very upfront about it. Folks, as you see from New York Times reporting and elsewhere, said basically the 2020 mind virus kept us from pointing out that this was happening because we were afraid, because it was happening in marginalized communities, we couldn't stop them without being called racist. That is a total abdication of duty. And she's a senator from that state, so she had duties as well. So although she strikes me as a tough lady who can talk tough about this, there was stuff going on while she was on the watch as well.
Mary Catherine, there's reports that Somali Americans number about 100,000 in Minnesota. And it's our understanding that you can't win a statewide race unless you have their vote. And you just mentioned the accusation of racism. And that's pretty much what the message was out of Minnesota. Anybody who was pointing fingers at what was going on there, you were accused of being a racist. Well, now that cover has been blown.
Right, and some, in fact, who were accused of things either threatened to sue or sued, saying, hey, we're being discriminated against because you're noticing the fraud. But the numbers don't lie, and the numbers aren't racist, and the stats matter, and every single dollar that is not stewarded by those who are in charge of these programs is stolen from another Minnesota or federal taxpayer who could have used that dollar for honest means and for something productive instead of fraud. So it's really a catastrophe to have that taken from people who are already struggling, maybe to, I don't know, pay for childcare, and it's going to non-existent childcare.
Also, I mean, it is difficult for any politician. Look, there's a reason I don't run. I don't have the stomach for it. But when you become a national laughingstock, and every meme is about you because you were chosen because you were going to show the Democratic Party that you were the masculine part of the party. There's all of that. But there's one thing deeper on the fraud that I want to point out. Keith Ellison, former congressman, is now the Attorney General of Minnesota. And I've mentioned this a couple times, but it's been a couple weeks, so let me just bring it back up. And 10-minute drill, the podcast has a lot more on this. He is on audio tape, leaked audio, personally promising fraudsters that he would pressure the government to continue funding the fraudulent enterprises and promise to shield them from investigation. So the apple is rotten all the way through and into the core. And so do Republicans have a chance? Right? I'm just saying, are you saying there's a chance that Minnesota could finally maybe turn a corner? It's been a difficult one for Republicans for many, many election cycles.
Look, I think even in a blue and purple state, even a very blue state, when you get to this level of abuse of the taxpayer, yes, Republicans can have a moment if they seize it. Ellison is a great example of exactly what you say, Dana, that people had to have known about this while it was happening. And in fact, he was talking to the very people doing it and making promises to them. So that can change voters' minds about where they're willing to swing. Republicans, however, have to put up a person against, whether it's Klobuchar or whomever, who can fight that fight. Lisa DeMuth, I believe, is the head of the Republicans in the House in the state, who had declared a long time ago. And then Mike Lindell, I think, is prepared to get in the race, or is poised or has announced such. So you have to be careful about who you pick on your side as well to make this competitive.
MK, I'm sure you followed this video over the holidays, this father-son team, Nick Shipley. They were showing up at these daycare centers where there were no kids. And a lot of folks in the media went after them, where they're reporting, as opposed to asking their own questions as to why you're receiving millions of dollars and had no children to show for it. Last comment on this.
Right. Look, I'm glad it went viral because it brings attention to something that deserves attention. Local reporters had worked on this in the past. Investigators in the Republican Party and elsewhere had worked on this in the past, but it really caught fire, and it should, so that a lot of people know this is happening. And this is a sort of a reflection back on Kamala actually went after in her government capacity in California, a guy who blew the whistle on Planned Parenthood with similar kinds of videos and reporting as an independent journalist. They don't like that stuff when it turns against their party and the people who are bringing in money for them.
All right, well, Mary Catherine Ham off to a roaring start in 2026. Thank you for joining us on this breaking news as Tim Walz pulls out of the governor's race in Minnesota. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube.
All right, so we got Fox's perspective. Let's get CNN's perspective.
Big breaking political news out of Minnesota. Governor Tim Walz, who of course was the Democratic nominee for vice president in 2024, has ended his re-election bid for governor. He is not going to run for re-election. This comes as pressure has been growing around this widening welfare fraud scandal. Now, Walz has not been accused of any wrongdoing, but it has been a growing political headache. Let's get right to CNN Chief National Affairs Correspondent
I'm
Jeff
surprised they
Sullivan.
haven't
This is
committed,
a well this morning, or at least would
commented
have
about
been
his
if you had said it was
wrongdoing.
going to happen, what, 2 or 3 months ago?
That's right, John. Good morning. Even perhaps 2 or 3 weeks ago, the reality is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had been insistent on running for a third term, which would have been unprecedented in and of itself. Minnesota has not elected a governor for 3 consecutive terms, but it is that deepening federal probe as well as this widening scandal. As you said, he is not implicated in this at all. This is actually somewhat old news in Minnesota. This has been going on for years and years. The prosecution started back during the Biden administration, but over the holidays, it certainly did widen. There was a right-wing influencer who posted a viral video on social media that quite literally went viral when the Vice President of the United States and the FBI director leaned in on this, and it shined a brighter spotlight on really what had been some deep concerns among Minnesota Democrats, even about the wisdom of Governor Walz seeking a third term. They believe that this would hang over the entire re-election effort and perhaps even damage the Democratic Party, even though there is no suggestion that there was wrongdoing. However, this widening scandal happened on his watch, but we are getting his reasoning in a new statement this morning that's ahead of a news conference he's scheduled to hold in just a few hours. And let's take a look at one small portion of this, if we can, John. The governor writes this. He said, "As I reflected on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute I spent defending my own political interests would be a minute I can spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences." And the governor goes on in quite a lengthy statement, which we expect him to read at that news conference, which is going to be happening at 11 a.m. in St. Paul, Minnesota. He goes on to take direct aim at President Donald Trump and allies of the president and Republican allies who have sought to make political hay out of this, if you will. Of course, they have a lot of this fraud is coming from some leaders of the Somali population in Minneapolis and Minnesota, longstanding members of the community. And the fraud goes back to the COVID time federal money that was sent to the state of Minnesota. It was simply misused to the tune of the billions. So dozens have already been convicted. But again, the governor is taking direct aim at President Trump over this for politicizing this entire matter.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Like many Minnesotans, I have to tell you, I was glad to turn the page on 2025. It was an extraordinarily difficult year for our state, and it ended on a particularly sour note. For the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of this state's generosity. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis. I don't want to mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington and in St. Paul and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in the country to raise a family. They've already begun trying to withhold funds that were meant to help families afford childcare, and they have no intention of stopping there.
It's like he's blaming them, but the fraud is happening underneath your watch, bro. Like, why are you making this about Trump, the Trump administration? They're doing this in response to the fraud that's happening underneath your watch. This is your state. You're the governor. At least you're about to be the former governor now. But still, while you're still in power, why don't you weed out this problem and deal with it? Instead of sitting here and doing it the Democratic way or whatever. Like, these people are taking advantage of your state's finances that are supposed to be going towards families that need actual child care assistance. especially for in other welfare benefits. Like if you look at the stats when it comes to like which group in Minnesota is especially are on welfare benefits, it's a lot of the Somali community. They're the biggest recipients of welfare in Minnesota. There was a viral video of a guy on TikTok. It was a Somalian. I don't have TikTok. I'm banned right now for TikTok, so I can't put it up. But maybe on the show stream tomorrow, I'll find it and I'll play it for you guys. But this guy really went on camera and was literally telling white people that he's happy they're going to work. They go to work. Tell them to go to work for him. They work for him. As long as they're working, he's getting welfare. He's taking advantage of the system that he's come here to live underneath, that he's supposed to be assimilating to. He's admitting that he's taking advantage of the system and not working at all, and he just wants people to take care of him. So it's just Tim Walz not taking accountability on his part. And yes, I know this has been going on for years already. This is well known already that welfare fraud schemes have been going on in Minnesota for a long time, even longer than this right now, currently speaking. And Nick Shirley is not really finding nothing new, but he is bringing more of a light to this problem, that if we do, like, you need to get this problem under control. And really, I wouldn't even blame Tim Walz 100%. I think Trump needs to go in there and just deal with the problem as he should be. And that means deporting these people, getting rid of these people, getting them out of America. That's the problem.
Make no mistake, we should be concerned about fraud in our state government. We cannot effectively deliver programs and services if we can't earn the public's trust. That's why over the past few years, we've made systemic changes in the way we do business. We've gone to the legislature time and time again to get more tools to combat fraud. We've fired people who weren't doing their jobs. We've seen people go to jail for stealing from our state. We've cut off whole streams of funding in partnership with the federal government, where we saw widespread criminal activity. We put new locks on the doors of our remaining programs, and we've hired a new head of program integrity to make sure that those locks can't be broken. All across this state, Minnesotans are hard at work on this problem. Advocates, administrators, investigators are on the front lines defending the integrity of our state's programs, and I want to give a very heartfelt thank you to all of them. There is more to do. A single taxpayer dollar wasted on fraud should be intolerable. And while there's a role to play for everyone, from the legislature to prosecutors to insurance companies to local and county government, the buck does stop with me. My administration has been taking fast, decisive action to solve this crisis. We'll win the fight against the fraudsters. But the political gamesmanship we're seeing from Republicans is only making that fight harder. We've got Republicans here in the state legislature playing hide and seek with potential whistleblowers. We've got conspiracy theorist right-wing YouTubers breaking into our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the President of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors and wrongfully confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on. It's disgusting and it's dangerous. Republicans are playing politics with the future of the state. It's shameful. And I've said it before, and I will continue to say it. We welcome ideas from anyone, in any party, from any walk of life, who wants to help us continue to stay ahead of these criminals. And we welcome the involvement of the federal government. I am grateful to the career professionals at the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI who have been helping us fight this fight for years. But I cannot abide the actions of the political leadership in Washington. These opportunists are willing to hurt our people to score cheap points. They and their allies have no intention of helping us solve this problem, and every intention of trying to profit off of it. Which brings me to this. 2026 is an election year. Election years have a way of...
It's more of like what I'm hearing is just like it's everyone else's fault, but not my fault. They don't want to help me do this. So of course I'm just gonna be like, I'm gonna have like a little soap fest or whatever. I'm gonna have like a little soap opera. Whereas you're not helping me do this. He sounds like literally Tim Walz sounds more like a woman in this speech that he's giving right now. No accountability at all from this guy. Like, bro, this is your state. You're a governor. You tell me you can't weed out the problem. It's obvious that it's coming from that said community. Instead of you sitting here and trying to run cover for them, it's coming from the community themselves. And you trying to play Captain Save a Somali. You're not doing no one a favor, bro. You got to go ahead and call the problem for what it is. They're the biggest receivers of welfare in the state. That's on paper. And he sits up here, yes, I get it about the xenophobic rat or whatever. Look, that's Trump saying what Trump is saying. But he's saying the obvious part out loud. That yes, it's coming from that community. They come here, they don't do shit, and they take advantage of the system. So you got to just come to decisions like these people just got to fucking go if they're not willing to assimilate. That's why they live in a little enclave amongst each other. I remember when I was watching the Tyler Oliveira, having a tongue twist. Tyler Oliveira video on YouTube of when he was going there to investigate this problem. And they literally said, one of the Somalis literally said, we don't have to learn to speak English. It's not required. We don't have to assimilate. Assimilating is wrong. When you listen to people like that come here and say they don't have to assimilate, there's already there's already a telltale sign that these people are already coming here and just think that they think lightly of America. If they really loved this country as much as they did, they would kiss and worship the ground it is and learn to speak English and assimilate. But they don't. They live amongst each other. They speak Somali. They don't speak English, and they fly around the Somali flag. I don't see these people throwing around our flag on our soul. But no. They'll run around literally with their flag and say, this is the Somali flag. We represent Somalia. Somali is my homeland. But yet they rather live here instead of live there. It doesn't make a lot of sense on face value. If they want to live here, then you assimilate to this country. If you don't want to live here, then just go home.
Ramping up the politics at a time when we simply can't afford more of that in Minnesota. In September, I announced that I would seek a historic third term as Minnesota's governor, and I have every confidence that if I gave it my all, we would win the race. But as I reflect on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who want to prey on our differences. So I've decided to step out of this race, and I'll let others worry about the election while I focus on the work that's in front of me for the next year. I'm passing on this race with zero sadness and zero regret. I did not run for this job to have the job. I ran for the job to do the job. Minnesota faces enormous challenges this year, and I refuse to spend a single minute doing anything other than rising to meet this moment. Minnesota has always come first and always will. That's what I believe servant leadership demands of me. As an optimist, I'll hold out some hope that my friends on the other side of the aisle will consider what servant leadership demands of them in the moment. We can work together to combat against the criminals. We can work together to rebuild the public's trust and make our state stronger. But make no mistake about it, if Republicans continue down the path of abusing power, smearing entire communities, and running their own fraudulent game at the expense of Minnesotans, I will fight back with everything that I have. I'm absolutely confident a Democratic and a DFLer will hold this seat come November. I'm confident that I'll find ways to contribute to the state that I love long after next January. But there'll be time to worry about all that later. Today, I'm proud of the work we've done to make Minnesota America's best place to live and raise kids. From our new paid leave policy to our child tax credit to our school lunch programs feeding every single child. And I'm doubly proud of the incredible team we put together to make this vision a reality. I want to take a moment to thank every member of my staff, to every single state employee who has been part of this fight. Now more than ever, I need you on the job. I need you to help work together to tackle the important work in front of us. And most of all, I want Minnesotans to know how grateful I am for the opportunity to serve this state, for the privilege that I have been given to serve in this office. I'm on the job. I'm focused on making sure that we stay America's best place to live and raise kids. No one will take that away from us. I'm proud of the way we treat our neighbors. I'm proud of the way that we welcome people to this state. I'm proud of the way that we innovate. And I'm proud of the way that we are optimists for the future. No one's taking this away from us. Not the fraudsters. Certainly not this president. Not on my watch. Tomorrow, I'll be back with you. I'll give you an update on America's best paid family medical leave program that is now a week into it. And at that time, I'll take all your questions. Thank you all.
All right. So that's that from Tim Walz, obviously speaking. So, I mean, he's made it clear he's dropping out the re-election bid, and he's going to basically kind of go into obscurity now. So he's kind of basically self-admitting that he's not going to fix the problem. He's just going to just leave it as it is and just drop out because he's getting a lot of heat from it, from the media, rightfully so, because he's the governor of Minnesota, and this problem is his problem. He needs to fix it. But he refuses to take accountability, instead of just choosing to keep blaming Republicans and Trump for this problem. Even though this fraud's been going on for very much a long time, even before Trump even came to office, it still basically needs to be addressed and needs to be called out for what it is. I mean, it's the community itself. I mean, it's coming from the community. Now, do I think all fraud in Minnesota is being committed by Somalis? No, but do I think majority of it's being committed by Somalis? Yes, I do. So that's that. I'm going to move on now. I'm going to talk about the protests that's going on in Iran over the currency's plunge to record low. So this is from Associated Press. Iran's largest protest in 3 years erupted Monday after the country's currency plummeted to record low against the U.S. dollar, and the head of the central bank resigned. So if you are living underneath a rock right now, you don't know what's going on in Iran. It's very much a bad situation right now. There is a lot of violent protests that are going on right now in the city, and they're calling for a actual regime change from the Iranian supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and the president too as well, Masoud Pezeshkian. So this is pretty much like the Israelis are pretty much somewhere rubbing their hands together. They're liking what they're seeing right now. The people are rising up, and you got Benjamin Netanyahu and a couple of Israeli people from a couple of other Israeli officials from his cabinet are cheering this on and encouraging the people to overthrow the regime, to the point where the Ayatollah has to probably retreat. And in recent reports today just came out earlier that the Ayatollah is most likely going to retreat to Russia if it comes to that point, to where they can't quell this protest and calm it down and come to like an agreement with the protesters. Then he's going to have to leave the country right now, or force being executed by their own people. So we're seeing in real time right now, it's pretty much similar to like the 1979 Iranian Revolution, where they overthrew the Shah in order to bring about the end of democracy in Iran and bring about a monarch. So, and this quick little video right here is from War Money Chronicles. It goes over how Iran's currency collapse will destroy the Middle East order forever.
Iran's currency collapse is not just an economic story buried in exchange rates and inflation charts. It is a slow-motion political earthquake that threatens to rewrite the balance of power across the entire Middle East. To understand why this matters far beyond Iran's borders, we first need to understand what a collapsing currency actually means inside a country like Iran, and why this crisis is fundamentally different from past economic shocks the region has seen. For decades, the Iranian rial has been under pressure, weakened by sanctions, mismanagement, corruption, and isolation from the global financial system. But what we are witnessing now is not a routine devaluation. It is a structural collapse of confidence. When a currency falls this sharply and persistently, it signals that people no longer trust the state to protect the value of their labor, savings, or future. In Iran's case, the rial's decline has turned money itself into a liability. Ordinary citizens rush to convert their earnings into dollars, gold, or even physical goods, not because they want to speculate, but because holding rials feels like holding melting ice. This loss of trust strikes at the heart of state power. A modern government depends on its currency to function. Salaries, subsidies, imports, military budgets, and regional influence are all paid for in money that must be believed in. When belief disappears, the government can still print currency, but every new note printed accelerates inflation, further destroying purchasing power. This creates a vicious cycle where the state becomes trapped between social collapse and financial implosion. Inside Iran, the consequences are already severe. Inflation eats away at middle-class life, turning professionals into survivalists. Businesses cannot plan, investors flee, and youth unemployment rises even higher. But the deeper danger lies in how this economic breakdown transforms society itself. When money loses meaning, people stop thinking long-term. Trust erodes not only in the currency, but in institutions, promises, and leadership. This is how.
And this also can turn into a violent outrage too from the general masses. So yes, that is definitely right. So as we're seeing right now, according to these protests right now, they are getting out of control and out of hand right now, to the point where I think just a couple of days ago, 4 people were killed because of the protest.
How economic crises evolve into legitimacy crises. Iran's political system has survived many shocks, but it has always relied on a core bargain with society. The state promised resistance, stability, and regional strength, while citizens tolerated restrictions in exchange for basic economic security. A collapsing currency shatters this bargain. When people cannot afford food, housing, or medicine, ideology becomes irrelevant. Survival replaces loyalty, and the social contract quietly dissolves. This internal breakdown does not remain contained within Iran's borders. Iran is not an isolated economy in a vacuum. It is a central pillar in the Middle East's geopolitical architecture, connected through energy markets, proxy networks, trade routes, and security arrangements. When Iran's currency collapses, its ability to project power weakens in ways that ripple across the region. Regional influence is expensive. Funding allies, militias, and political movements across the Middle East requires stable cash flow, access to foreign currency, and reliable logistics. As the rial collapses, the cost of maintaining these networks rises dramatically. Paying salaries abroad becomes harder. Supplying equipment becomes more expensive, and loyalty begins to fray. Groups that once relied on consistent Iranian support start looking elsewhere, hedging their bets or fragmenting internally. At the same time, Iran's rivals see opportunity. A financially weakened Iran is less able to deter pressure from regional adversaries. Gulf states, Israel, and global powers recalibrate their strategies, sensing vulnerability. This shifts the balance of deterrence that has kept certain conflicts frozen or limited for years. When one pillar of the regional order weakens, every other actor adjusts, often in destabilizing ways. Energy markets are another critical pressure point. Iran sits on vast oil and gas reserves, but a collapsing currency undermines its ability to invest in infrastructure, maintain production, and negotiate from a position of strength. Energy revenues that once stabilized the economy now fail to keep pace with inflation and currency depreciation. This reduces Iran's leverage in global and regional energy politics, altering supply dynamics and empowering alternative producers. Sanctions amplify this collapse, but they're not the sole cause. Years of economic isolation have created parallel markets, smuggling networks, and shadow economies that benefit a small elite while draining the formal system. As the currency collapses, these informal structures grow stronger, hollowing out the state from within. The government becomes less a national institution and more a manager of crisis, constantly reacting instead of governing. History shows that currency collapses often precede major political transformations. From Latin America to Eastern Europe, when money fails, systems change. Sometimes this leads to reform, but more often it leads to instability, authoritarian tightening, or fragmentation. In Iran's case, the stakes are far higher because of its size, population, and regional entanglements. A destabilized Iran does not simply reform quietly, it reshapes the Middle East around it. Neighboring countries feel the pressure first through refugees, black market trade, and security spillovers. Economic desperation drives migration, while weakened borders enable smuggling and arms flows. Fragile states nearby struggle to absorb these shocks, increasing the risk of localized conflicts turning regional. What begins as a currency crisis becomes a security crisis. The most dangerous aspect of Iran's currency collapse is not immediate chaos, but long-term unpredictability. When a state loses economic control, decision-making becomes erratic. Leaders may take greater risks externally to distract from internal failure, or clamp down internally in ways that provoke backlash. Either path increases volatility in an already unstable region. This is why Iran's currency collapse threatens to destroy the Middle East order as we know it. The current regional system, fragile and imperfect, depends on predictable power centers. Iran has been one of those centers, balancing rivals and anchoring conflicts within certain limits. As its economic foundation erodes, that anchor weakens, and the entire structure begins to shift. As Iran's currency continues its rapid collapse, the effects extend far beyond economic statistics. They begin to unravel the intricate web of alliances and influence that Tehran has built across the Middle East over decades. For Iran, soft power has always been as important as hard power. Its network of proxies, militias, and political allies, from Lebanon's Hezbollah to Shiite factions in Iraq to the Houthis in Yemen, relies heavily on steady funding, weapons, and logistical support. A weakened rival threatens to disrupt these networks in ways few outside the region fully appreciate, setting the stage for a dramatic reshaping of Middle Eastern power structures. The first ripple is financial. Maintaining proxy groups is expensive. These organizations require salaries, weapons, training, and supplies, often sourced internationally. With the rial collapsing, Tehran must convert increasingly worthless currency into dollars or other stable currencies to fund its operations abroad. As conversion becomes more difficult and costly, the amount of support available diminishes, creating strains on the field. Militant leaders accustomed to predictable backing now face uncertainty. This financial squeeze can foster internal tensions, forcing local actors to compete for scarce resources, sometimes even turning against each other. When loyalty is transactional, a financial collapse can quickly translate into political fragmentation. At the same time, Iran's weakened financial standing alters the calculus of its adversaries. Regional rivals such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel closely monitor Iran's economic health, knowing that a financially
And they definitely are watching this closely to see what would happen. They're monitoring because like Israel's already preparing internally for another war with Iran, and of course Iran at the same time is also testing out some of its missile capabilities too. They've expanded a lot of their ballistic missiles, hypersonic and supersonic weaponry. So this time they won't be caught off guard this time from Israel. So this won't be like another surprise attack like the previous one. But as you can see right here, you know, they have their own internal battle going on domestically with this currency crash.
constrained Tehran is less capable of retaliation or expansion. These states may seize the opportunity to apply pressure, engage in covert operations, or strengthen alliances to counterbalance what was once Iranian dominance in certain theaters. For instance, in Yemen, Saudi-backed forces might intensify campaigns against the Houthis, betting that Iran can no longer sustain long-term support. Similarly, in Iraq and Lebanon, political factions backed by Iran may lose influence as alternative networks backed by Gulf powers or Western actors step in to fill the vacuum. Another critical factor is the erosion of Iran's credibility as a regional power. In Middle Eastern politics, perception is reality. Governments, militias, and local populations assess strength based not only on military capabilities, but also on economic stability and the ability to deliver on promises. When Iran's currency collapses and its domestic economy spirals, the perception of weakness grows. Allies may begin hedging their bets, seeking alternative patrons, or adopting more independent strategies. This erosion of influence is subtle but cumulative, often leading to a gradual decline in Tehran's ability to project power even without overt conflict. Energy politics further magnify the consequences. Iran's oil and gas sector has long been a cornerstone of both its domestic budget and its regional leverage. Currency collapse undermines investment in production infrastructure, maintenance, and exports. Reduced revenues limit the government's capacity to subsidize domestic needs or fund foreign operations. Simultaneously, competitors in the global energy market may gain an advantage as Iran struggles to maintain output. Nations like Saudi Arabia, Russia, and even Iraq can exploit this disruption to expand market share and exert geopolitical leverage, further weakening Iran's regional influence. Energy dependency is a critical tool in Middle Eastern diplomacy, and losing that advantage can shift alliances and embolden rivals. Moreover, the rial collapse fuels internal instability that inevitably spills outward. Economic despair drives social unrest, protests, and political agitation within Iran. Historically, periods of high inflation and currency devaluation correlate with intensified demonstrations and political activism, especially among urban youth and middle-class professionals. As unrest grows, the Iranian state may divert attention and resources from foreign engagement to domestic control. Security forces are stretched, intelligence operations abroad are deprioritized, and the ability to maintain disciplined proxy networks diminishes. In effect, Iran's internal crisis reduces its capacity to influence regional events, creating openings for other powers to act unchallenged. The destabilizing effect also extends to financial networks that operate across borders. Iran has long relied on informal banking systems, hawala networks, and clandestine trade routes to bypass sanctions and fund regional allies. A collapsing currency strains these networks, raising transaction costs and increasing the risk of default or fraud. Partners abroad may be reluctant to continue cooperation under financial uncertainty, further isolating Tehran. For instance, militia groups in Lebanon or Iraq may receive delayed payments or reduced supplies, forcing them to source funds independently. Such shifts often increase criminal activity, corruption, and local tensions, creating a cascade of instability that spreads regionally. The geopolitical vacuum created by Iran's weakening is particularly consequential in conflict zones where multiple powers compete. In Syria, for example, Iranian influence has been a stabilizing factor for the Assad regime, providing military support, advisors, and economic assistance. With funding constrained by currency collapse, Iran's ability to maintain its role diminishes, potentially empowering other actors like Russia, Turkey, or even Israel to expand their influence.
Israel's definitely one of the ones that's looking at this and ready to jump on, ready to just pounce on because they smell blood right now, because they are looking to spread their influence in the Middle East and become the top hegemon of the Middle East. It's because they see Iran is collapsing right now. All the Middle East countries right now are looking at what's going on in Iran right now to see what is going to happen in these next couple of days, weeks, months. We don't even know how long this is going to really last for, but we know for sure these protests are getting more and more daring. They're getting more violent. These people are definitely getting more desperate. So, and then the Ayatollah obviously is watching this too as well, and already came up with a plan that if it gets to the point where he has to retreat, he has safe haven to go to and seek asylum in Russia. Of course, he'll be joining a couple of other people that have left their countries to go and take refuge in Russia. Bashar al-Assad is also there. I forgot the other guy's name. Bashar al-Assad is there. It was one guy I had from the NSA. What was his name from the NSA? Fuck, he'll come back to me. I know Jackson Hanko, political commentator. He's also in Russia. He has refuge over there too, as well. He has citizenship there. But the more that this problem is going on right now, Edward Snowden. Edward Snowden is another one who has seek refuge in Russia. But the more that this people are getting anxious, they are going to go after the regime at some point, because they're already targeting people. They already have military personnel in the streets to try to quell this problem, which has led to like 4 protesters getting killed. And Trump has already threatened Iran that if the military gets involved more and more, they're going to go there and basically attack the regime. So, and as you know, like I said before, Benjamin Netanyahu, who has pushed for more war with Iran right now, is probably looking at this right now because they got so much problems going on domestically. They're going to pounce on Iran and commence their bombing process. So this issue is definitely not in Iran's favor right now. This is bad timing to have like a massive protest in the country, to where there are protesters being killed. There are violence in the streets, unrest. Your currency's low. You have allies that are being decimated all over by Israel. So, I mean, at some point you got to realize, like, is this all going to fall apart in their faces, and then Israel's just going to come out on top and basically will get their regime change that they want? That's real questions that we have to answer. I'll play this a little bit more, but then we're going to move on to our next 2 videos. Our next video, then we're going to go jump on X, and we're going to see some of the footage from the protest that's going on.
A recalibration in Syria could have domino effects across the Levant, affecting Lebanon's fragile political balance, Jordan's security concerns, and even Palestinian politics. The collapse of a single economic pillar, currency value, therefore reverberates across complex networks of alliances, creating uncertainty and instability. The psychological dimension of Iran's collapse is equally critical. Economic weakness signals vulnerability not only to rivals, but to its own population. When ordinary citizens witness their government struggling to maintain even basic functions, trust erodes. This loss of confidence can manifest as protests, strikes, or immigration, weakening social cohesion and political authority. Neighboring states may face increased refugee flows, cross-border crime, and a rise in illicit economic activity. The collapse of one country's currency can thus act as a regional contagion, destabilizing neighboring societies and economies in unexpected ways. Perhaps most dangerously, a financially weakened Iran may resort to riskier foreign policies to distract from domestic crises. Historically, regimes facing internal pressure have sometimes pursued aggressive or provocative actions abroad to rally nationalist sentiment and deflect attention. This creates the potential for miscalculations or escalations in already tense environments. Conflicts that were previously contained, such as skirmishes in the Gulf, proxy battles in Yemen, or cyber operations against adversaries, could intensify, producing outcomes that are difficult to predict and potentially catastrophic for regional stability. Finally, the collapse of the rial threatens the Middle East's broader strategic balance. For decades, regional powers have operated within an informal equilibrium where Iran, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, and other actors maintain a fragile but predictable balance of influence. This balance is not peaceful, but it has kept full-scale wars in check. A currency collapse undermines one of the key pillars of this system, introducing uncertainty and volatility that ripple through alliances, conflicts, and negotiations. The Middle East, already fraught with historical grievances and sectarian divides, becomes far more unpredictable when a major player like Iran is destabilized economically. In summary, Iran's currency collapse is not just an economic story, it is a geopolitical earthquake. It undermines the state's ability to fund allies, erodes credibility and influence, shifts the calculations of rivals, and destabilizes conflict zones across the region. Financial collapse and social unrest feed into each other, creating a self-reinforcing cycle that threatens to redraw the map of power in the Middle East. In the next part, we will examine the international dimensions of this crisis, including the roles of global powers, sanctions, and foreign financial networks, and how they might accelerate the destruction of the existing Middle East order. The ramifications of Iran's currency collapse extend far beyond the Middle East, drawing in global powers and exposing the vulnerabilities of international financial systems. While the crisis may appear, at first glance, as a domestic issue confined to Tehran, the reality is that Iran occupies a pivotal role in regional and global networks, from energy markets to global trade routes, from financial
All right, so we're gonna move on now. I'm gonna save the rest of this tomorrow for the chill stream because we're gonna obviously talk more about the protests right now tomorrow because there's gonna be a lot more development going on each day. So obviously speaking, we are gonna probably cover this uh more and more each day. So we're gonna go on to over here. This is from PPR Global. Tehran regime faces collapse.
The Iranian dictatorship is collapsing in the streets. From Tehran to Isfahan, from Khuzestan to Mashhad, the entire country is being shaken by massive riots. There is no longer fear in the streets, only angry Iranians who say, angry mothers and fathers, university students and shopkeepers stand shoulder to shoulder. Everywhere, posters of Khomeini are being burned, and symbols of the regime are being destroyed. The wave of protests began with the economy and water shortages, but the events that have continued since December 27th have evolved into a civil war, the greatest existential threat to the regime. The people are marching with slogans like, Khomeini will fall, the Shah will return. The regime's nightmare of 1979 has returned, but this time the roles have changed. Millions of Iranians in the streets are calling for the regime's nightmare, the exiled king, Reza Shah Pahlavi, to return to power. While Pahlavi shouts, victory is ours! Government build.
Pahlavi is the worst choice ever. The guy's not fit to rule Iran. But I get it because like they're so angry and frustrated that they're calling for Pahlavi to take control and take over to bring about democracy in the Middle East. This is just not it's not a good idea. You know, and Pahlavi is obviously controlled by Israel. So, I mean, you already know what you're going to get when you get Pahlavi put in power.
Things are falling. Economic advisors are resigning. Russia is preoccupied with its own problems. China is silent. This time, no one can come to the aid of the mullahs. We are at the breaking point where the Iranian people are saying,
China obviously already has their issues going on with Taiwan, and then Russia is still dealing with a war right now. They did try to aid Venezuela by giving them fighter jets, but as you know, the United States most likely already watching Maduro for weeks and already learned his sleep patterns, learned everything about him. How does he move around? And even probably how does he receive his food at his big giant palace mansion? So it's kind of obvious that Russia and China are preoccupied with their own issues right now, you know, especially Russia, who is still currently in a war with Ukraine. So they're definitely not gonna get involved right now if the people overthrow the regime.
enough is enough. Get ready, we're starting. This is the dawn of a brand new Iran, born from the collapse of the dictatorship. The trigger for this chaos was pulled by President Pezeshkian himself. He admitted that the state coffers were empty, saying, "Everyone who got dollars pocketed them. We won't be distributing any more." This admission caused an earthquake in the heart of the regime's economy, the Tehran Bazaar. Shopkeepers closed their shutters, and slogans like, "No to Gaza, no to Lebanon, my life is for Iran," shattered the regime's foreign policy. Inflation surpassed 42%, and food prices skyrocketed by 70%. The people were forced to work for a month just to afford 1 gram of gold. The Iranian regime is now, 47 years later, becoming the victim of the monster it created in 1979. There is no money, there is no water, authority is gone. Khomeini has been missing for days, probably hiding in an underground bunker, and his regime is burning under the uprising of millions of Iranians. Look at the map right now. Nearly all 31 provinces are on red alert. Everywhere is as red as an autumn map. In Bagmalek, people are marching with slogans like, "Khomeini will fall, the Shah will return." Near Izza, villagers are chanting, "Cry Khomeini, Pahlavi is coming." This is Nahavand. Thousands of people are in the streets. This is Iraq. The city is ablaze. Chaos reigns. This is Mashhad University. Students are shouting, "We would rather die than be humiliated."
Wow.
Amid this chaos, the people have one path, one leader. The slogans are no longer economic, but entirely political. The same voice is rising from everywhere. Kavid Shah. In Loristan, the people say, "Pahlavi will return. This is the final battle." And the king broke his silence. Iran's exiled leader, Reza Shah Pahlavi II, addressed his people and the army directly. The Shah's call to the people and security forces sparked a wave of revolt across the country, unlike in 1979. The events were not limited to slogans. The actions turned into a mutiny targeting the regime's security architecture. In Fars province, Fassa and Darood, angry crowds stormed and surrounded the governorate buildings. Regime buildings are falling. The Bezich Center in Hamadan was seized and burned. Do you know why the regime is helpless? Because the stick has broken. The Revolutionary Guards, once thought invincible, are collapsing in the face of the people's anger. IRGC forces are abandoning their vehicles and fleeing in the city of Kudast. Tens of thousands of protesters are chasing security forces, forcing regime forces to retreat. Military equipment is being set on fire in the middle of the streets in Foulad Shah. The people have broken down the wall of fear. And the most critical development. Some soldiers are switching sides. Defections within the army have begun. The most terrifying scenario for the regime. This is a mutiny. For Khamenei, this is more than a political crisis. It is an existential doom scenario. Now, let's take the camera away from the clashes in the streets of Tehran and focus on the global chessboard, the real geopolitical dimension of events, the bigger picture. Because what we are witnessing in the streets of Iran today is not just an explosion of anger linked to gasoline prices or exchange rates. This is the breaking of the weakest link in the global autocracy chain. In the Moscow-Beijing-Tehran axis, which has for years forced the world into a multipolar order, propping each other up to stay in power, the Iran pillar is collapsing. And this collapse contains one of the greatest ironies of modern history. The Islamic Revolution, which was the nightmare of the Western world in 1979, has now turned into a 2026 model nightmare, a counter-revolution for the Eastern Bloc and autocratic regimes. Khamenei is experiencing the most crowded, loudest, but most helpless loneliness in history. However, this time, there is a major absence on the stage. Russia and China, the big brothers who came to the rescue of the Iranian regime in every social event in the past, are silent this time. The support autocratic regimes give each other is actually based on a brotherhood of survival. They fear the domino effect with a deathly dread, knowing that when one falls, the other will be shaken. So why? Where are Khamenei's big brothers, Russia and China? The answer is simple, ruthless, and just as instructive: the orphanhood of autocrats. This alliance was not a union of values or a pledge of loyalty, but a pure partnership of fear and interest. And when the ship takes on water, the captains close the lifeboats before the rats. Russia is currently busy melting its own army in the Ukrainian quagmire and trying to keep its economy afloat under sanctions. Putin has neither a mercenary unit to send to Tehran, nor an air defense system, nor a single ruble to donate. Moscow's logistical and military capacity is so stretched that it can only helplessly watch the collapse of its strategic partner Iran from the Kremlin's windows. This passivity is not a choice for Russia, but a necessity. And this collapse means Russia will lose its largest logistical base in the Middle East. The security...
That's what I said earlier too as well, that Russia is so preoccupied with the war with Ukraine that they don't really have any manpower to spare. It's like they're currently still dealing with a war that should have been over with, quite frankly, probably 2 weeks after it happened, but Ukraine's still so much into the fight because they're getting, not only they're getting financial incentive for the United States, they're also getting weaponry. That's what's keeping them into the fight for so long. Now, of course, this is a war of nutrition. So over time, Ukraine's forces are going to dwindle and dwindle and dwindle to pretty much till they have no one left to really fight. But probably Zelensky himself, or he just has to give up. So this is why Zelensky is trying to find some way to quell this fight. You know, even though Ukraine is losing badly right now, Russia is also suffering a lot of losses too at the same time. So this is just not it's not just a one-sided war. They're clearly still, there's a lot of people dying on both sides. So that's why Russia can't necessarily spare anything for Iran right now to help quell this problem, because quite frankly, they don't really have much to spare. And their economy is being struck into death right now by our sanctions. So, and as you know, Trump has already just announced the other day that he's not happy with Putin right now. Not at all.
Of the Caspian Sea and the southern corridor. If Iran falls, Russia's southern flank will be completely defenseless, and its presence in Syria will be logistically cut off. For Russia, Iran's fall would mean the completion of its own encirclement. On the Chinese front, the situation is even more pragmatic, cold, and ruthless. Beijing, grappling with its own economic stagnation, real estate crisis, and internal debt problems, refuses to make political or military investments in a sinking ship. For China, Iran was a source of cheap oil and a stop on the Belt and Road project. In other words, an asset. However, an Iran that is becoming unstable, being dragged into civil war, and rejected by its own people is no longer an asset for Beijing, but a toxic liability. China's silence is the clearest sign that it has pulled the plug on the Khamenei regime. This situation brings to mind a terrifying scenario for all autocratic regimes, a chain of revolutions similar to the Arab Spring. Remember, a spark in Tunisia set Egypt, Libya, and Syria ablaze. There is no guarantee that the "death to the dictator" slogans chanted in the streets of Tehran today will not echo in Moscow or another capital tomorrow. It is precisely this contagious courage that autocrats fear. The Iranian people's bare-handed repulsion of IRGC tanks is shattering the perception of an invincible state. The year 1979, with the fall of the Shah's regime, gave birth to a model of theocratic totalitarianism. At the time, this change upset the balance in the region. Today, the pendulum is swinging in the opposite direction. What is happening as of January 1st, 2026, is the revenge of 1979. However, this rematch has the potential to shake not only Iran's domestic politics, but also the global balance of power. Because if Iran falls or undergoes a radical regime change, Russia's logistical center in the Middle East and China's energy security and Belt and Road project will be compromised. The Iranian regime is actually experiencing the depths of a legitimacy crisis in this process, which it calls an economic crisis. Pezeshkian's confession that whoever took the dollar ate it is the official document of the state's bankruptcy. The people no longer want reform. They want to completely pull the plug on the system. At this point, the lack of help from the autocratic bloc is the main factor turning the regime's internal panic into full panic mode. From a historical perspective, this uprising in Iran is a battle between the remnants of the 20th century and the...
It's almost kind of even more funny because like the little 12-day war that happened in June of last year, it's what brought the regime closer to the people. And now because of this currency issue to where their currency is effectively kind of useless, now the people have turned on the regime even far worse than they have done before. Now they're just going out there and violently calling for a regime change and calling for Reza Pahlavi to be put in charge of Iran at that point. So it's kind of like a terrible situation for the regime and the Iranian supreme leader and also for the president, because they're trying to quell the problem as best as they can, but they don't seem to be coming to a solution, well, not, at least not right now or anytime soon for that matter.
Demands of the 21st century. Young people, women and students represent the clash between an ideological state apparatus and the realities of the modern world. Violence, the regime's only card, is no longer a solution. It is like pouring gasoline on a fire. The fuse of this chaos was lit not by an external intelligence operation or cross-border intervention, but by an economic dagger plunged into the very heart of the regime itself. This is not an external attack, but a case of self-destruction. It all began with President Mesut Pezeshkian's fatal confession, which drove the final nail into the regime's coffin. Pezeshkian stood before the cameras and declared that the state coffers were empty, uttering a sentence a head of state should never say. Everyone who received the subsidized dollar pocketed it. We will no longer distribute it. This sentence was not a simple change in fiscal policy or an austerity measure. It was the regime's official declaration of bankruptcy. By telling its own people, there is no money left in the coffers, fend for yourselves, the state unilaterally terminated the invisible but vital social contract between the citizen and the state. The regime, which for years had bought off the people's anger with subsidies, cheap bread, cheap gasoline, and cheap electricity, admitted it could no longer make these payments, and that anger spilled into the streets like a tsunami. Immediately after this admission, the Tehran Bazaar, the historical lifeblood of the Iranian economy and the most critical barometer of the regime's political legitimacy, experienced a shutdown that had a seismic effect. This is the heart of the conservative capital that financed the 1979 revolution and brought the mullahs to power. If the bazaar shuts down, it is not just a strike. It means the regime's plug is being pulled. And that is exactly what happened. The currency, the rial, depreciated so much against the dollar that it ceased to be a medium of exchange and became nothing more than a waste of paper. In the midst of this conflagration, the regime decided to raise gasoline prices for the first time in 6 years, effectively lighting a match to the powder keg of social anger that had already been ignited. At this point, another factor paralyzed the regime's capacity to use hard power. An infrastructure apocalypse came into play, the energy collapse. State offices, banks and universities in 21 of the country's 31 provinces were closed under the pretext of cold weather and energy conservation. But everyone on the streets of Tehran knew that this was not a conservation measure, but a blackout and a loss of control. Power plants were not being supplied with fuel, water pumps were not working, and in critical areas such as Khuzestan, thirst was driving the people to despair. The regime had fallen into a state of failed state, too helpless to even maintain basic public services, its logistical lines severed. President Pezeshkian's panicked replacement of the central bank governor, or his ridiculous promises of cash assistance to the people, equivalent to about $5 per month, were like putting a band-aid on a fourth-degree burn patient. The people no longer wanted band-aids. They wanted the gangrenous limb amputated, meaning the regime to be completely removed. The most critical, most crucial finding of our investigation is this. This uprising is genetically different from the 2009 Green Movement or the 2022 Mahsa Amini protests. While previous movements were limited to the demands of a specific segment, namely the middle class's right to vote or women's freedom of dress, the January 1st, 2026 uprising is a massive cross-class coalition united around the axes of hunger and honor. Oil workers are shutting off valves, students are occupying campuses, shopkeepers are closing their shutters, and most importantly, the religious conservative segments considered the regime's base are also uniting under the slogan, Khamenei is a murderer and his rule is illegitimate. This is a scenario in which the regime's social base has been completely eroded, its ideological legitimacy has been reduced to zero, and only naked, crude violence remains. As a result, January 1st, 2026 is not just a date on the calendar, but the day the fate of the Middle East was rewritten, the day an era ended. In Iran, the sun no longer rises in the east, but from those dark streets, from the eyes of brave women, angry young people and fathers who say, enough! The Khamenei regime is paying the price for its economic suicide, its war on its people, and its arrogance in the harshest way possible, by being consigned to the dustbin of history. That wall of fear has been torn down once, and those bricks can never be put back in place. The flight of the regime's forces, the burning of posters, the calling for the king, the fall of the governorates, all of this proclaims a single truth, an unalterable verdict. Iran has passed the point of no return. The reform table has been overturned. There is nowhere left for Khamenei, the Revolutionary Guards, and this decrepit, rotten regime to run. Nowhere left to hide. The ominous, oppressive silence in Tehran has given way to the cry for freedom of millions. And remember, when a people stops being afraid, there is nothing dictators can do, no bullet they can fire. Iran is marching toward freedom, and no power can stop this march. So, what are your thoughts on this matter? Please share your thoughts in the comments. To stay informed about PPR Global's special analyses, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Thank you for choosing us.
That was a good video. Give the channel a follow. It's PPR Global. They're reporting on this right now. So I'm going to take my screen share off right now. Let me look at some of these protest videos to make sure they're safe for Facebook. I don't want to play nothing that's going to get me get my channel banned. Okay, so I got one video right here. Play this one on screen first. Make sure everything's good. All right. So we got this one right here. Mass protest against the regime has spread across Iran, intensified, and reports Khamenei is preparing to flee to Moscow if his forces lose control. Okay. It's very crazy over there right now. Let me see, get another one. All right, so all right, got one right here. Clashes intensify in Iran as protesters face security forces. Brutal confrontation continues in the streets. All right. Let's go ahead and see. Wow. It's definitely pandemonium right now. Oh, I guess I can play this one. All right. Yeah, it's definitely pandemonium up there right now. All right, so this one's interesting. So this one's from Poly Market. Breaking: Iran enters its 8th night of national protest. This was just yesterday against the regime. And armed citizens have now taken to the streets. So, man, this is turning from bad to worse every day. 43% chance the supreme leader loses power. Let's see. Okay, so it's risen over time right now. Now they're at a 43% chance that Khamenei will be removed. I wonder if I should place my bets right now, considering I'm not a betting man, and that's definitely a joke. So don't take that to heart. I got to make sure everything's clear. I don't want to post anything that's going to be insane on Facebook. I mean YouTube. I don't want to. I'm not trying to get my shit nuked right quick. Okay, I'm not trying to get my channel nuked, so I have to be very careful with what I post on YouTube. All right. Bro. Boy, this is insane. Guess I can watch this one right here. Well, that's this is getting very ugly real quick. So we're gonna end this that portion right there on the Iran protest segment. My final thoughts on this is that yeah, this it's only a matter of time, I think. Right now, it's not looking good for the regime. Unless they can come to an agreement with the protesters and find a solution, it's not looking good. Khamenei's going to probably have to retreat and probably go to Moscow. And Israel is going to get what they want. They're going to get their regime changed as a result of a revolution, an uprise. Because they're encouraging the people of Iran to stand up and go against the regime and overthrow them, basically. They want Reza to come there and be the new president of Iran, basically, or the default ruler, probably the new supreme ruler. And they probably don't want a monarch no more. They probably want democracy, because to them probably now democracy is a good thing, and from their view now that they've dealt with being underneath a monarch for so many years, that now they want to live under something different, something new, something fresh in their eyes. So that's that on that. So my final thoughts is that yeah, this is not looking good for the regime, and day by day it don't seem like the protesters quieted down at all. So that's that. We're going to move on from that segment. Now we're going to get to our main subject of the night. We're talking about Nicolas Maduro. As you can see right here, the former president of Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro is a Venezuelan politician and former union leader who served as the president of Venezuela from 2013 until his de facto removal from power by the United States in 2026, following his capture and extraction from the country. He served as the vice president of Venezuela under President Hugo Chavez from 2012 to 2013 and Minister of Foreign Affairs from 2006 and 2006 to 2012. So I didn't get a chance to cover the press conference, but this is a little bit from it. This is like 36 minutes of Trump saying U.S. will run Venezuela after Maduro's capture. This is not the full part. It's not the full press conference, but this is like, I'm pretty sure everyone's already pretty much saw it, but like I didn't cover it on stream, so this is just a little bit of it.
We appreciate you being here. Late last night and early today, at my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault, and it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas, to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. And if you think about it, we've done some other good ones like the attack on Soleimani, the attack on al-Baghdadi, and the obliteration and decimation of the Iran nuclear sites just recently in an operation known as Midnight Hammer, all perfectly executed and done. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Celia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York, it's Jay Clayton, for their campaign of deadly narco-terrorism against the United States and its citizens. I want to thank the men and women of our military who achieved such an extraordinary success overnight with breathtaking speed, power, precision, and competence. You rarely see anything like it. You've seen some raids in this country that didn't go so well. They were an embarrassment. If you look back to Afghanistan, or if you look back to the Jimmy Carter days, they were different days. We were
different situations too as well. I see some people online, the anti-war crowd, they're trying to compare this to regime changes that happened in the Middle East. This is definitely not at all similar to those. I get it from the standpoint of a regime change, but we didn't take out the regime this time. We only took out the leader, and we captured him and brought him back to face judicial proceedings. So we obviously, this is, I wouldn't say similar to them, of course, and this is us enacting the Monroe Doctrine in our Western Hemisphere and preventing Russia and China from having any more influence in our backyard. So this is like a heated debate going on right now on X between the America First crowd and the leftist progressives, the Muslims, the Islamists, whatever you want to call it. That crowd that are like anti-war, and like the right wing, who was like, you got some neocons, of course, that are on this side or whatever, but you got guys like me who believe in a third option to where you could be pro-war and not actually be a neocon, because like at some point you have to agree that warfare is necessary in order to spread influence without getting involved in necessary wars like regime change wars that happen in the Middle East, which are not our stomping grounds, but the Western Hemisphere is our stomping grounds. It's our sphere of influence. All these countries that are in this hemisphere should be under the thumb of the United States. And people may say, well, what about this? Well, they're also under control of Israel. Yes, of course, I'm understanding that. But here's another caveat to look at this. As time goes on, there is going to be an America First president that's going to come along with a cabinet that are going to put the country first and foremost, and will tell Israel to basically fuck off. So just give us some time. But right now, I'd be lying if I say, as an American nationalist, we should not have countries like Russia and China doing anything in our hemisphere. And if you're an American, you're listening to me right now, you should be feeling the same way.
a respected country, again, maybe like never before. These highly trained warriors operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a what's called a ready position. But they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. If you would have seen what I saw last night, you would have been very impressed. I'm not sure that you'll ever get to see it, but it was an incredible thing to see. Not a single American service member was killed, and not a single piece of American equipment was lost. We had many helicopters, many planes, many people involved in that fight. But think of that, not one piece of military equipment was lost, not one service member was, more importantly, killed. The United States military is the strongest.
And this is thank God there was not one serviceman that died or whatever. They did say reports that there were some military personnel that was killed during the strikes. We still don't have the numbers of that officially yet, so we don't know exactly how many are dead or whatever. That's according to reports that are coming out of Venezuela, but we still don't have verified numbers to look at yet.
And most fearsome military on the planet by far, with capabilities and skills our enemies can scarcely begin to imagine. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. There's no equipment like what we have. And you see that even if you just look at the boats, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills 25, on average, 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela. And that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland. We can't take a chance that somebody else takes over Venezuela that doesn't have the good of.
That is a good question yet. Why haven't these people, these refugees or whatever, why haven't they gone back yet? These illegal immigrants that are from Venezuela, these refugees that are here, these asylum seekers or whatever, they're seeking refuge here. Why haven't they gone back home yet? They're free to go back. They're liberated or whatever. And from my understanding, I believe I heard on the grapevine that it's because of they are trying to get in, they already swore in the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, in as the president just today. And they are trying to ensure the people are under safe hands under her presidency and that she is to play nice with the United States, of course. And another thing we want to know is if she's going to unnationalize the oil and let in Exxon and all these big corporations, these big oil corporations to come in and basically get back basically what the United States is owed. We partner with Venezuela, of course. And one of the many things that we do get from Venezuela, which is not much, we get the oil. So, and because Venezuela nationalized it, we are not able to we're not able to access a lot of it because they nationalized the oil. Now that Maduro's taken out of power, and now that Delcy Rodriguez has said on paper she's willing to do whatever the United States wants, is she going to unnationalize the oil? That's what I want to know. So, as more reports come out about that, because she just got sworn in today, we're going to know more information. But if she plans on playing nice to the United States, which she should be, her best bet is to unnationalize the oil and let the United States have access to it, to where we can both benefit this. We can fund them from their economy, and meanwhile, we take their oil and use that to enrich the United States, first and foremost. I mean, people are going to probably say, look, we're stealing from them or whatever. We're not stealing nothing. It's called negotiations. It's called you scratch my back, I scratch your back.
The Venezuelan people in mind. We've had decades of that. We're not going to let that happen. We're there now. And what people don't understand, but they understand as I say this, we're there now, but
if you're just joining into the stream too, I don't know if you guys missed it. I just covered a bunch of other subjects today. I covered J.D. Vance's house being attacked by a Antifa-like leftist. I talked about the Iranian protest, and I talked about Tim Walz stepping down for re-election in 2026 of this year. And basically just conceded to the fact that he can't fix the problems of going to Minnesota, and he's just going to drop out and go home. And now we're covering our finest story tonight. We're talking about Nicolas Maduro.
Going to stay until such time as the proper transition can take place. So we're going to stay until such time as we're going to run it, essentially, until such time as a proper transition can take place. As everyone knows, the oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust for a long period of time. They were pumping almost nothing by comparison to what they could.
All right, one more thing before we continue on. I'm sorry, I keep pausing it. I'm going to have a chill stream tomorrow. It's going to be around 8 p.m., I believe, too, as well. I'm going to go for 6 hours tomorrow. I'm going to cover many different things, react to stuff, probably react to some police shootings, of course. Talk about what's going on in the streaming world, react to some streamers or whatever. See, we're really going to cover it all tomorrow. Today is strictly politics is my show. So no fun reactions right now.
Have been pumping and what could have taken place. We're going to have our very large United States oil companies, the biggest anywhere in the world, go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. And we are ready to stage a second and much larger attack if we need to do so. So we were prepared to do a second wave if we needed to do so. We actually assumed that a second wave would be necessary, but now it's probably not. The first wave, if you'd like to call it that, the first attack was so successful, we probably don't have to do a second, but we're prepared to do a second wave, a much bigger wave, actually. This was pinpoint, but we have a much bigger wave that probably won't have to do. This partnership of Venezuela with the United States of America, a country that everybody wants to be involved with because of what we were able to do and accomplish, will make the people of Venezuela rich, independent, and safe. And it will also make the many, many people from Venezuela that are living in the United States extremely happy. They suffered. They suffered. So much was taken from them. They're not going to suffer anymore. The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States. As alleged in the indictment, he personally oversaw the vicious cartel known as Cartel de las Solis, which flooded our nation with lethal poison, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans, many, many Americans. Hundreds of thousands over the years of Americans died because of him. Maduro and his wife will soon face the full might of American justice and stand trial on American soil. Right now, they're on a ship. They'll be heading to, ultimately, New York, and then a decision will be made, I assume, between New York and Miami or Florida.
Now, real quick, we're going to pause right quick, and then I'm going to show you exactly. This is how the United States special forces were able to capture Maduro. This is from AI Tilly, one of the best out there that creates these AI videos of showing of military demonstrations, basically showing you basically it's an AI reenactment. That's basically what these videos are. They basically give you a reenactment of said military event, especially the one that just happened recently with the capture of Nicolas Maduro.
How do you capture a high-value target when the whole world is watching? You create a masterclass in deception. The CIA set the stage with a single building as bait and filled the sky with 150 aircraft to create a deafening sonic shield for the helicopters to drop Delta forces. 35s lit up the perimeter, turning night into day. By the time the dust settled, the helicopters had already touched down and Maduro was gone. We'll also look at how the U.S. uses the F-35 jets in its Navy to launch a large-scale attack, all in the video ahead. In the dead of night that is 2 in the morning, the lights went out in Caracas. By 5 a.m., the president of Venezuela was gone. But how U.S. played a deception games. While the whole world were focused on the aircraft carriers in the Caribbean, a shadow war was being fought on the ground. This wasn't an invasion, it was a surgical extraction. We finally have the declassified timeline of how U.S. forces breached the heart of Caracas and extracted Nicolas Maduro. Let's start with step 1. The setup. This didn't happen overnight. For months, the U.S. had been tightening a naval quarantine around Venezuela. The U.S. Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group and the U.S. Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group were parked off the coast. The pretext was clear. The U.S. designated the Venezuelan government a narco-terrorist state, specifically targeting the drugs lords, but while the Navy squeezed the coast, intelligence assets were tracking one man. They waited for a specific window, a moment where Maduro was stationary and vulnerable. Step 2, the strike. It began at exactly 2 in the morning Venezuelan Standard Time. High above, several F-35 stealth fighters punch a hole through the enemy lines, destabilizing their anti-air defenses. Like these Russian S-300 missiles located all over the strategic high-value target. With the skies cleared, the path opens for Delta Force helicopters to fly straight towards the mission. Here comes the deception as the helicopters flew. The jets started firing with more strikes as it hit Fort Tuna, the main military base and command center, and La Carlota Air Base, destabilizing Venezuelan air support. Reports from the ground describe widespread explosions and a sudden communications blackout. The chaos wasn't the goal, it was the cover. But how did the raid happen? We have to look at step 3. Under the cover of darkness and chaos, the Tier 1 operators went to work.
This
But
is
what
so
the exact
cool.
unit tasked with the mission? It is the Delta Force, one of the most elite secret special forces units in the U.S. military. Witnesses in Caracas reported low-flying aircraft skimming the rooftops, flying well below radar coverage. The team breached a secure compound believed to be a safe house within the massive Fort Tuna complex. Resistance from the Venezuelan Presidential Guard was swift but ultimately futile, as the helicopters lay cover fire. The operators moved with surgical speed, landing on multiple points. But how exactly the capture and extraction happened? For this, let's look at step 4. Specialized helicopters hovered over the objective to insert the assault team. While dozens of attack helicopters laid down suppression fire, the Delta Special Forces descended and started the search for the high-value targets. How did they find him? Simple. The CIA had planted spy inside Nicolas Maduro close circle. While back in the U.S., Delta Force built an exact replica of his safe house, rehearsing the raid until they could do it blindfolded. While operators breached the room so fast, his security could not even react to the situation as the sound of flash grenades disoriented the security guard. Using blowtorch, they caught him before he could even lock all the doors. Maduro's shock and
I'm telling you, this could be a movie someday. The way that this raid happened, the way that everything was set up, this could be a literal movie. Like, this is just so awesome. I'm kind of have to glaze up a little bit for this. Like, this is just so fucking awesome, bro. You can't lie. This is just so cool.
off froze him as Delta Force breached the compound. Nicholas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores, were physically secured. This wasn't a negotiation. They were detained and immediately moved to the extraction point. These aircraft are capable of performing urban extractions from buildings and refueling in midair. Within minutes, they were airborne, leaving Venezuelan airspace and heading to a secure floating staging base in the Caribbean. This Operation Southern Spear has changed the geopolitical map of South America overnight. But wait before after the extractions, there were reports of F-35 jets also leading the tip of the spear for the attack. We'll look how the United States used F-35 jets instead of F-16s for operations in Venezuela, because this is a well-organized and militarized Venezuela has positioned advanced Russian S-300 missile systems, Chinese radar networks, integrated Russian air defenses, and Shahed drones along its borders. This creates a highly lethal and challenging environment that older S-16s would struggle to survive. As stated, around 150 aircrafts and a massive 8 U.S. destroyers were stationed there. It also has 3 amphibious aircraft carrier and surveillance plane to turn it into a massive command and control juggernaut capable of overcoming a modern military's air defenses. Signals a readiness to counter Venezuela's entire air defense network if necessary. But why Venezuela Air Force failed to intercept? As of 2025, Venezuela's fighter jet fleet consists mainly of approximately 21 Sukhoi Su-30 multirole fighters delivered by Russia between 2006 and 2008, which now form the backbone of their combat air power. Additionally, they maintain about 5 operational S-16 Fighting Falcons from an older batch, including 3 single-seat S-16As and 2 two-seat S-16Vs. These S-16s are aging and suffer from limited maintenance and part support due to U.S. sanctions, although they have been supplemented with Israeli upgrades. Venezuela acquired its F-16 jets from the United States through a foreign military sales agreement called Peace Delta in May 1982, during a period of good diplomatic and military relations. They were the first Latin American country to receive the S-16, with deliveries occurring between 1983 and 1985. The reason the U.S. does not use S-16s in current operations is because these jets lack the stealth capabilities necessary to evade the S-300 and other integrated defenses. The advanced S-300V or anti-2500 systems, supported by dense Chinese and Russian radar, can easily detect and target older aircraft at long ranges. Sending S-16s into such an environment would result in high attrition risks, as they are vulnerable to radar detection and missile engagement.
Wow.
Don't forget the Russian Buck air defense system that can take out an S-16 with ease. These are cheap R-15 or 24 Buck systems are already active and mobile all over the country. Additionally, S-16s are less effective in contested airspace saturated with drones, especially the Iranian Shahed drones used by Venezuela for reconnaissance and kamikaze strikes. The F-35, however, offers crucial advantages. Its stealth design enables it to fly undetected or with much lower risk, making it effective against advanced surface-to-air missiles and networked radar systems. Its sensor fusion, electronic warfare, and data link capabilities allow it to simultaneously suppress and target mobile and fixed air defense positions, adapting rapidly to counter Russian and Chinese radar configurations. While the aircrafts took out the anti-air defenses Venezuelan military as a whole, this allowed the CIA and special forces to advance towards its target. The overwhelming presence of advanced Russian, Chinese, Iranian, and indigenous air defense and drone systems on the Venezuelan border means that the stealth fighter jets, or the first wave of attack, provide both the survivability and strike capability required for such operations. But how do they rotate clockwise? Well, the distance from Puerto Rico to Venezuela is about 1,300 kilometers. This is roughly 810 miles, which translates to around 1.5 hours of flight time for an F-35 flying at high subsonic speeds. These jets rotated clockwise as its combat radius is approximately 770 miles, meaning it can reach most of Venezuela from Puerto Rico with careful fuel management and limited loitering. To extend mission time and reach deeper inland, air-to-air refueling tankers deployed strategically in the Caribbean region support these operations.
This is crazy. Oh, man.
In situations requiring strikes within minutes, U.S. amphibious assault ships equipped with F-35Bs can launch jets rapidly. From such ships positioned in the Caribbean, F-35Bs can reach Venezuelan targets within roughly 15 to 10 minutes, depending on speed and route. Targets typically include narco-traffickers' networks, air defense installations, command centers, and drone facilities, enabling flexible sea-based strike options against both Venezuelan military and criminal infrastructure. In essence, the F-35 deployment by the U.S. near Venezuela redefines military capabilities in the region. It combines stealth, advanced sensors, electronic warfare, and networked operations to overcome sophisticated air defenses and maintain persistent air superiority and rapid strike ability against a broad spectrum of targets in Venezuela. This reflects a strategy that goes beyond counter-narcotics to deter and, if necessary, decisively counter the Venezuelan military threat. We also made a deep dive into the sea, air, and land components of the nuclear triad, so subscribe for more videos to not miss a beat.
Wow. That was quite a demonstration of our military might. Like, people really think that anyone can fuck with the United States. This is the reason why we're number one, baby. This is the reason why we're number one. Like, let me just glaze my great country of the United States for a moment. This is why we're number one, and all these other countries are second to us. There's a reason why we rape these countries. Take that back, take it back, take it back, take it back. I didn't mean that word. This is why we grape these other countries. I will say that. You know, this is why we are the best in the world. The United States is the best country in the world. We own these people. The Western Hemisphere, no one can fuck with the United States. No one. And I repeat that, no one. Number one, baby. USA.
But we have people where the overwhelming evidence of their crimes will be presented in a court of law. And I've seen it. I've seen what we have. It's both horrible and breathtaking that something like this could have been allowed to take place. For many years after his term as president of Venezuela expired, Maduro remained in power and waged a ceaseless campaign of violence, terror, and subversion against the United States of America, threatening not only our people, but the stability of the entire region. And you all saw it. In addition to trafficking gigantic amounts of illegal drugs that inflicted untold suffering and human destruction all over the country, all over in particular the United States, Maduro sent savage and murderous gangs, including the bloodthirsty prison gang Tren de Aragua, to terrorize American communities nationwide. And he did indeed. They were in Colorado. They took over apartment complexes. They cut the fingers off people if they called police. They were brutal, but they're not so brutal now. And I just have to congratulate our military, Pete, and everybody, and our National Guard, because the job that they've done, whether it's in Washington, D.C., where we have a totally safe city, where it was one of the most unsafe cities anywhere in the world, frankly, and now we have no crime in Washington, D.C. We haven't had a killing. We had the terrorist attack a few weeks ago, a little bit of a different kind of a threat, but we haven't had a killing in a long period of time, 6, 7 months. We used to have two, on average, 2 a week in Washington, our capital. We don't have that anymore. The restaurants are opening. Everyone's happy. They're walking their daughters. They're walking their children, their wives. They walk to restaurants. Restaurants are opening all over Washington, D.C. So I want to thank the National Guard. I want to thank our military. And I want to thank law enforcement. It's been amazing. And they should do it with more cities. We're doing it, as you know, and we're doing it in Memphis, Tennessee right now. And crime is down. We've just sort of started a few weeks ago, but crime is down now 77%. And the governor of Louisiana called, great person, and he wanted us to help him, as you know, in a certain very nice part of Louisiana, and we have done that. It was a rough section, and we have crime down. I understand it's down to almost nothing already after 2.5 weeks. New Orleans, it's down to almost nothing, and we've only been there for 2.5 weeks. Can't imagine why governors wouldn't want us to help. We also helped, as you know, in Chicago, and crime went down a little bit there. We did a very small help because we had no working ability with the governor. The governor was a disaster, and the mayor was a disaster, but it knocked down crime. But we're pulling out of there when they need us. We'll know. You'll know. You'll be writing about it. And likewise, Los Angeles, where we saved Los Angeles early on, where the head of the police department made a statement that if the federal government didn't come in, we would have lost Los Angeles. That's long after the fires. That's when they had the riots in Los Angeles. We did a great job. Got no credit for it whatsoever, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. We don't need the credit. But we'll be pulling out when they need us. They'll call, or we'll go back if we have to. We'll go back. But we did a great job in various cities. But the place that we're very proud of is Washington, D.C., because it's our nation's capital. We took it from being a crime-ridden mess to being one of the safest cities in the country. But the gangs that they sent raped, tortured, and murdered American women and children. They were in all of the cities I mentioned, Tren de Aragua. And they were sent by Maduro to terrorize our people. And now Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela. There will no longer be threats. For years, I've highlighted the stories of those innocent Americans whose lives were so heartlessly robbed by this Venezuelan terrorist organization. Really one of the worst. One of the worst. They say the worst. Americans like 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary from Houston. Beautiful Jocelyn Nungary. What happened to her? They, as you know, they kidnapped, assaulted, and murdered by Tren de Aragua animals. They murdered Jocelyn and left her dead under the bridge. There was a bridge that will never be the same to so many people after seeing what happened. As I've said many times, the Maduro regime emptied out their prisons, sent their worst and most violent monsters into the United States to steal American lives. And they came from mental institutions and insane asylums. They came from prisons and jails. The reason I say both, they sound similar. Actually, prisons, a little bit more hostile, a little bit tougher. A mental institution isn't as tough as an insane asylum, but we got them both. They sent from their mental institutions. They sent from their jails, prisons. They were drug dealers. They were drug kingpins. They sent everybody bad into the United States, but no longer. And we have now a border where nobody gets through. In addition, Venezuela unilaterally seized and stole American oil, American assets, and American platforms, costing us billions and billions of dollars. They did this a while ago, but we never had a president that did anything about it. They took all of our property. It was our property. We built it. And we never had a president that decided to do anything about it. Instead, they fought wars that were 10,000 miles away. We built Venezuela oil industry with American talent, drive, and skill, and the socialist regime stole it from us during those previous administrations, and they stole it through force. This constituted one of the largest thefts of American property in the history of our country, considered the largest theft of property in the history of our country. Massive oil infrastructure was taken like we were babies, and we didn't do anything about it. I would have done something about it. America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did. Furthermore, under the now deposed dictator Maduro, Venezuela was increasingly hosting foreign adversaries in our region and acquiring menacing offensive weapons that could threaten U.S. interests and lives. And they used those weapons last night. Potentially.
I'm gonna take a real quick bathroom break, and I'll be right back.
in league with the cartels operating along our border. All of these actions were in gross violation of the core principles of American foreign policy, dating back more than 2 centuries, and not anymore. All the way back, it dated to the Monroe Doctrines, and the Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot, by a real lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know. It's Monroe Doctrine. We sort of forgot about it. It was very important, but we forgot about it. We don't forget about it anymore. Under our new national security strategy, American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen. So just in concluding, for decades, other administrations have neglected or even contributed to these growing security threats in the Western Hemisphere. Under the Trump administration, we are reasserting American power in a very powerful way in our home region. And our home region is very different than it was just a short while ago. The future will be, and we did this in my first term. We had great dominance in my first term, and we have far greater dominance right now. Everyone's coming back to us. The future will be determined by the ability to protect commerce and territory and resources that are core to national security. These are core to our national security. Just like tariffs are, they've made our country rich, and they've made our national security stronger than ever before. But these are the iron laws that have always determined global power. And we're going to keep it that way. We will secure our borders. We will stop the terrorists. We will crash the cartels, and we will defend our citizens against all threats, foreign and domestic. Other presidents may have lacked the courage or whatever to defend America, but I will never allow terrorists and criminals to operate with impunity against the United States. This extremely successful operation should serve as warning to anyone who would threaten American sovereignty or endanger American lives. Very importantly, the embargo on all Venezuelan oil remains in full effect. The American Armada remains poised in position, and the United States retains all military options until United States demands have been fully met and fully satisfied. All political and military figures in Venezuela should understand what happened to Maduro can happen to them, and it will happen to them if they aren't just fair, even to their people. The dictator and terrorist Maduro is finally gone in Venezuela. People are free. They're free again. It's been a long time for them, but they're free. America is a safer nation this morning. It's a prouder nation this morning because it didn't allow this horrible person and this country that was doing very bad things to us. It didn't allow it to happen. And the Western Hemisphere is right now a much safer place to be. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank General Raisin Kane. He's fantastic. Man, I've worked with a lot of generals. I worked with some I didn't like. I worked with some I didn't respect. I worked with some that just weren't good. But this guy is fantastic. I watched last night one of the most precise attacks on sovereignty. I mean, it was an attack for justice. And I'm very proud of him, and I'm very proud of our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, who I'm going to ask to say a few words. Thank you very much.
Can you explain how the U.S. will run Venezuela? Well, thank you, Mr. President. Finally, a commander-in-chief the world respects and the American people deserve. And as the President said, words can barely capture the bravery and the power and the precision of this historic operation. A massive joint military and law enforcement raid flawlessly executed by the greatest Americans our country has to offer. American warriors are second to none, the best in the world and the best of our country. What all of us witnessed last night was sheer guts and grit, gallantry and glory of the American warrior. I'm simply humbled by such men, and I tip my hat to our chairman, Dan Raisin Kane, and all those Americans who stood watch last night. Our warriors are the elite of America, and again, President Trump has your back. No other country on planet Earth, and it's not even close, could pull this kind of operation off. And no other president has ever shown this kind of leadership, courage, and resolve, the most powerful combination the world has ever seen. As the president said, our adversaries remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime. The coordination, the stealth, the lethality, the precision, the very long arm of American justice, all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around, and he found out. President Trump is deadly serious about stopping the flow of gangs and violence to our country. Deadly serious about stopping the flow of drugs and poison to our people. Deadly serious about getting back the oil that was stolen from us. And deadly serious about reestablishing American deterrence and dominance in the Western Hemisphere. This is about the safety, security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people. This is America first. This is peace through strength. And the United States War Department is proud to help deliver it. Welcome to 2026, and under President Trump, America is back. I'd like to welcome now our Chairman Raisin Kane, to give a few more details about the operation. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning. Last night, on the order of the President of the United States, and in support of a request from the Department of Justice, as the President said, the United States military conducted an apprehension mission in Caracas, Venezuela, to bring to justice two indicted persons, Nicolas and Cecilia Maduro. This operation, known as Operation Absolute Resolve, was discreet, precise, and conducted during the darkest hours of January 2nd, and was the culmination of months of planning and rehearsal, an operation that, frankly, only the United States military could undertake. What I'd like to do this morning is talk to you through some of the preparation and the details without compromising any of our tactics, techniques, and procedures. There is always a chance that we'll be tasked to do this type of mission again.
I had my mic probably paused the entire time, especially when I asked you guys a question. So if you're watching the stream live, I want you to write in the chat and let me know how you feel about the United States basically running the Venezuelan government, basically why Maduro's captive. Trump said during this press conference that we are going to run the government ourselves. I don't know how that's going to be implemented. I'm not in favor of that, of course. So I want you to give me your feedback. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about that, personally speaking. Me, I'm not really necessarily for it. I don't know how that's going to be implemented, but I mean, we will see.
Our interagency work began months ago and built on decades of experience of integrating complex air, ground, space, and maritime operations. While the past 2 decades have honed the skills of our special operations forces, this particular mission required every component of our joint force, with soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians working in unison with our intelligence agency partners and law enforcement teammates in an unprecedented operation. We leveraged our unmatched intelligence capabilities and our years of experience in hunting terrorists, and we could not have done this mission without the incredible work by various intelligence agencies, including the CIA, NSA, and NGA. We watched, we waited, we prepared, we remained patient and professional. This mission was meticulously planned, drawing lessons from decades of missions over the last many years, many missions over these last many years. This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. Failure of one component of this well-oiled machine would have endangered the entire mission, and failure is never an option for America's joint force. Those in the air over Caracas last night were willing to give their lives for those on the ground and in the helicopters. Let me talk a little bit about the preparation. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. And as the president said earlier today, weather in Venezuela is always a factor this time of the year. And over the weeks through Christmas and New Year's, the men and women of the United States military sat ready, patiently waiting for the right triggers to be met and the president to order us into action. Last night, the weather broke just enough, clearing a path that only the most skilled aviators in the world could maneuver through. Ocean, mountain, low cloud ceilings. But when tasked with a mission, this organization does not quit. At 10:46 p.m. Eastern time last night, the president ordered the United States military to move forward with this mission. He said to us, and we appreciate it, Mr. President, good luck and Godspeed. And those words were transmitted to the entire joint force. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. Thousands and thousands of hours of experience were airborne. Our youngest crew member was 20, and our oldest crew member was 49, and there's simply no match for American military might. As the night began, the helicopters took off with the extraction force, which included law enforcement officers, and began their flight into Venezuela at 100 feet above the water. As they approached Venezuelan shores, the United States began layering different effects provided by Spacecom, Cybercom, and other members of the interagency to create a pathway. Overhead, those forces were protected by aircraft from the United States Marines, the United States Navy, the United States Air Force, and the Air National Guard. The force included F-22s, F-35s, F-18s, EA-18s, E-2s, B-1 bombers, and other support aircraft, as well as numerous remotely piloted drones. As the force began to approach Caracas, the Joint Air Component began dismantling and disabling the air defense systems in Venezuela, employing weapons to ensure the safe passage of the helicopters into the target area. The goal of our air component is, was, and always will be to protect the helicopters and the ground force and get them to the target and get them home. As the force crossed the last point of high terrain where they'd been hiding in the clutter, we assessed that we had maintained totally the element of surprise. As the helicopter force ingressed towards the objective at low level, we arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective, and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force and self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military with professionalism and precision, with no loss of U.S. life. After securing the indicted persons, the force began to prep for departure. Helicopters were called in to exfiltrate the extraction force, while fighter aircraft and remotely piloted aircraft provided overhead coverage and suppressive fire. There were multiple self-defense engagements as the force began to withdraw out of Venezuela. The force successfully exfiltrated and returned to their afloat launch bases, and the force was over the water at 3:29 a.m. Eastern Standard Time with indicted persons on board. And both Maduro and his wife were embarked aboard the USS Uwajima. In closing, what we've witnessed today is a powerful demonstration of America's joint force. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we debrief, we rehearse again and again, not to get it right, but to ensure that we cannot get it wrong. Our jobs are to integrate combat power so when the order comes, we can deliver overwhelming force at the time and the place of our choosing against any foe anywhere in the world. I am immensely proud today of our joint force and filled with gratitude to represent them here today. There is simply no mission too difficult for these incredible professionals and the families that stand by them and support them. As we stand here this morning, our forces remain in the region at a high state of readiness, prepared to project power, defend themselves, and our interests in the region. This operation is a testament to the dedication and unwavering commitment to justice and our resolve to hold accountable those who threaten peace and stability. In closing, I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to the brave men and women who executed this mission. Their courage and tireless commitment to our nation are what makes us strong. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I don't have much to add to what you've heard now, other than the following points. Nicolas Maduro was indicted in 2020 in the United States. He is not the legitimate president of Venezuela. That's not just us saying it. The first Trump administration.
Marco Rubio's really the ringleader in this. It's not Trump, not PXF, not even the general. I mean, Rubio was calling for regime change in Venezuela as far back as during the first Trump administration. He's been calling for regime change in Venezuela for years. And he's a Cuban. I think he's Cuban descent. I mean, his family is not. I don't think they were born from America. They came here as immigrants, legal status, and then he was born here, of course. So, Rubio has been pushing for regime change in Venezuela for a long time. So I think this is more of his win more than a Trump, a Hegseth, or the general.
The Biden administration, the second Trump administration, none of those three recognize him. He's not recognized by the European Union and multiple countries around the world. He is a fugitive of American justice with a $50 million reward, which I guess we saved $50 million. And
Make sure.
Yeah, exactly. But
don't let anybody claim it. Nobody deserves it but us.
But I want to be clear about one thing. Nicolas Maduro had multiple opportunities to avoid this. He was provided multiple very, very, very generous offers and chose instead to act like a wild man, chose instead to play around. And the result is what we saw tonight. The other message here is the following. You have a guy, like many people around the world, they like to play games. You have a guy who decides he's going to invite Iran into his country, is going to, do the confiscation of American oil companies, is going to flood our country with gang members, is going to take Americans prisoner and try to hold them for hostage and trade them like he was able to do with the Biden administration. Basically likes to play games all this time and thinks nothing's going to happen. And I hope what people now understand is that we have a president. The 47th president of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when he tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it. He actions it. I can tell you, I've watched this process now for 14, 15 years, been around it. Everybody talks. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. When I get there, we're going to do this. We're going to take. This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know. Because this is the way it's going to play out. And I think people need to understand that this is not a president that just talks and does letters and press conferences. And, if he says he's serious about something, he means it. And this is something that was a direct threat to the national interest of the United States, and the president addressed it. They're the president of peace, by the way. I told you what I just said earlier. This guy had multiple opportunities to find his way somewhere else and figure out another. He could have been living somewhere else right now, very happy, but instead he wanted to play big boy. And so now, he's got other sets of problems on his hands. And but I think that the message here should be for the world. Look,
The correct terminology that Rubio wants to say, he fucked around and he found out.
the president doesn't go out looking for people to pick fights with. He's not generally wants to get along with everybody. We'll talk and meet with anybody, but don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well. And so I hope that I guess that lesson was learned last night, and we hope it'll be instructive moving forward.
Like I said, Maduro fucked around and he found out. So this is from the New York Times right here. This was today. Maduro says he's a prisoner of war, not a defendant. The words matter. His simple statement in federal court was aimed directly at contradictions in the Trump administration's actions in the Caribbean. Nicolas Maduro, the deposed Venezuelan leader who pleaded not guilty to federal charges in a Manhattan courthouse on Monday, was insistent that he was not a common criminal defendant, but a prisoner of war. Mr. Maduro sending a pointed message that the special forces raided on his compound in Venezuela on Saturday was not a law enforcement operation, as the Trump administration has. Make sure my mic's good. As the Trump administration has argued, but a military action. So that's what Maduro claimed today while he was in court for his first court hearing, along with his wife. They both pleaded not guilty, as you can see right here. This is from Fox News.
Yeah, that's not what we're here to do at this moment. The judge then asked if Maduro has read the indictment. The counsel, about whom we just spoke, answered for him and says it's been summarized for him and that he understands it. Maduro then waived the public reading of the charges, says he will read them himself. The judge did then read him his rights. He acknowledged his counsel, Mr. Pollack. Then the judge read essentially his Miranda. And then Maduro said he did not know of these rights, but that he is now informed. And then Maduro went on to plead not guilty.
Wow. He says, I am still president of my country.
Right. And he says that for a number of reasons. I would imagine, number one, because that's the way he sees his situation. Number two, Manuel Noriega, the Panamanian dictator who was taken into custody in the Bush administration, and we heard from Bill Barr earlier today, he was the AG in charge of overseeing that at the Department of Justice at the time. But the head of state immunity issue is the one that he knows he can press, that he will try to use to defend himself, that I have immunity because I am the head of state. It did not work for Noriega in that trial back in Panama, and he was indicted on very similar drug charges, drug trafficking charges. The other thing that I would mention is, just in terms of venue, as Emily pointed out, it could have been anywhere. I think some people would have argued that Florida was a good venue for this particular case. It is in New York. It falls under the U.S. Attorney Jay Clayton in the Southern District of New York in this case, and they have a lot of experience with this, but it is unlikely to go to trial for a very long time. And one of it will have a very long process, is what I'm hearing from former federal officials.
The crazy thing about it, the prison facility that Maduro is going to be at is going to be the same facility where Diddy and Sam Altman are going to be at. That is crazy. You got three high profile figures are going to be locked in the same cell. And I also heard today, before I came on stream, 6ix9ine saying that he's going to, when he is arrested, because he has to turn himself in, I believe today or tomorrow, and he has to go back to jail or prison, he's going to be in the same cell as Maduro. That is insane. It's like a comedy movie, pretty much. These jokes don't write themselves. So Maduro's going to be in the same cell as 6ix9ine. Bro. Imagine the former Venezuelan president and a rapper who was a high-profile rapper in a high-profile case to indict a bunch of Bloods and I think Crips too as well, is going to be sharing a cell together. This is something you see off of a TV show.
And so he is likely to sit in jail for quite some time.
That's a fascinating detail, how long he sits in jail. And that cartel of the Sons, De La Soles, you've got those members, you've got Tren de Aragua, you've got others. Those people are going to try to continue to do business. And that's just fresh intelligence on the ground for who will be there, the United States. And so it gets more complicated day by day, I would imagine. But that is such an interesting point of how long he'll sit there. I was trying to find his age, because that matters too, right? The longer he sits there, maybe that changes things for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's been in power for 17 years. And we can look up his age. I'm not exactly sure. But it is, you know, he's not recognized. 50 countries do not recognize him as a legitimate leader of this country, including the EU. So this is we just heard about this from Michael Waltz at the United Nations. So this is there's a lot of consensus on this. Did you just discover?
Yeah, I found it, and maybe because I'm getting older, but 63 doesn't seem that old to me.
Yeah, I would put him around there. You know, and he's a tall man.
Well, apparently he was towering over his counsel.
Yeah,
so yes.
Just want to point out too.
Yeah, he's definitely tall
as well. Texas Attorney Mark Donnelly.
That photo that a bunch of the DAs took with him, dude is like 6 foot. He's towering over all the special agents. He's literally a giant to them, and they're like the dwarfs. Bro, when I saw that photo, it was kind of insane to see that, because like the guy's literally a giant. Like Maduro looks kind of small on TV, but when you actually see like a photo of the guy's literally like he towers over most of the DEAs that were in the photo. I don't even think there was not one that was just as tall as him, which is kind of insane. We don't have no tall DEAs, bro. They're all like what, under 6 foot? They're like 5'11", 5'9", 5'8". What the fuck? So I'm guessing the 6 foot giants don't want to join, don't want to be special agents. They just rather go and play sports. That's crazy. Some of the real life Jason Bournes, James Bonds types are the ones that go play in the NBA and the NFL. Imagine if we harness that sports power and put that as secret agents. Bro, we would literally have real life Jason Bournes and James Bonds. I'm just thinking about that in my head right now.
He filed a motion to be admitted as counsel for Celia Adela Flores de Maduro. So I believe that there are something is happening with her right now, according to Paul's notes in the room. It appears we are getting a sense of a very defiant Maduro in this courtroom, insisting he has done nothing wrong repeatedly to the point where the judge has had to stop him from talking.
Yeah, and he said, well, we could talk about the 4 counts and the fact that you want to, say that you're not guilty of all 4, but we're not doing it today. I want to bring in Carrie Urban. Again, we have a team of people who are watching this for us, legal experts, and we also have Paul Morrow, who is a legal expert as well, former NYPD, and has been inside that courtroom many times. He's at the courthouse. So Carrie Urban, I want to go to you now about the defiance that we are hearing reported inside the courtroom. And was that anticipated? Does that matter?
Oh, yes. Well, the fact that he's wearing a black shirt on top of his orange jumpsuit, that's defiance in a T-shirt, right? It's symbolizing control. It's saying, look, I'm doing what I want to do still, and I'm in charge. But look, his wife, and since we're talking about ages, she's 69, and she is about to be arraigned. She's no shrinking violet. She was the head of Venezuela's Congress, what's Congress for them. She was Attorney General, and there are some serious allegations against her in this indictment, including the fact that she attended a meeting where she accepted hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes to broker a meeting between a large-scale drug trafficker and, wait for it, the director of Venezuela's National Anti-Drug Office. Yes, they actually have one, apparently. Her nephews were recorded, presumably to DEA sources, and they said that they were, quote, at war with the United States. And that's very helpful language, I think, for the government's case, as they bring that, for sure. And those were her nephews. But interestingly, they indicated in this meeting that they were seeking to raise $20 million in drug proceeds to support a campaign by Celia for her re-election campaign for National Assembly when she was running that. So it's quite a family operation that has been using the Venezuelan government as a front for this international drug operation for many years now.
So, the most recent video that I remember where we saw anything coming from Maduro was in that moving car where he was saying, come and get me, and he's not afraid of anything, that sort of thing. I'm paraphrasing, some of it was salty. But I'm curious to know what's being seen in court today. Is that the individual who was anticipating being taken? They were trying to go into, a locked room. They were trying to get away and hide in their protective room, and they couldn't outrun our U.S. military, he and his wife.
Yeah, that's right. And look, this is standard processes of justice that's happening right now. They're being arraigned. They're entering their pleas. We're seeing who's representing them. And his wife, it seems like, is up next. The fact that he wants to read, apparently, the charges himself, I think you just said that out loud. I didn't see that in the notes, but that's quite interesting as well. He is, I think, like Martha was pointing out, he is very much wanting to portray to the world, I am the president of Venezuela. I am in charge, and I'm not going down without a fight. Now, of course, because of the Noriega precedent and this being a very, I think, open and shut law enforcement case with the added benefit of defenses from a national security perspective, I don't really think he has much of a shot. But this is going to take some time, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
So it's interesting from our team, our producing team, and also Paul Morrow in the courthouse. The wife, Celia Flores, is dressed the same as Maduro. She confirms her identity. Her voice is weak or thin. She waives her charges being read to her. Overall, Maduro comes off as defiant. The wife seems defeated and small. That's our team making these observations. And she says that she's pleading not guilty, quote unquote, completely innocent. So we are hearing from her at this point, Carrie.
Yes, well, she's entering her plea. This is part of what you see at an arraignment. But again, she was a power player in Venezuela politics and government. And in the indictment, the government also alleges that both she and her husband maintained their own personal groups of state-sponsored gangs to facilitate and protect their drug trafficking operations. I mean, this is extensive, powerful stuff here. And she appears to be right there with Maduro all along. In fact, there's some local reporting that I was looking at earlier that has suggested along the way that she may be even more astute than he is, and that she may actually behind the scenes even be more powerful. So while I'm looking at Maduro for sure, because obviously he's the one in charge, I personally am just as interested in his wife and seeing what happens there.
Yeah, and look, I want to remind everybody, we are joined today by Trey Gowdy, Jonathan Turley, Donna Rotuno, who we've seen this hour, and Carrie Urban is our legal expert standing by. But I want to bring it to the couch for right now. Inside the courtroom, prosecutor just stated that the defendants have the right to request consular consultation. That is to consult with the Venezuelan consultation. Judge reads this to the two defendants, and then they both stand and say, yes, they want that. This will be scheduled. Emily.
Yes, and interestingly, after that, so the judge also reminds everyone about the Brady obligations, sort of interrupting the prosecutor to state so, which effectively means that the prosecution has to present all evidence, give all evidence to the respective defendants' attorneys. And they say, of course, I will comply. Of course, we will do this. I note, too, just to take a step back, that the judge opened the proceeding by making a broader statement about how he will ensure a fair trial. And you and I, all of us have here on the couch, covered very extensively the amount of trials where the judge does that. These high.
They're most likely going to drag this out for a while. We don't know how long it's going to be till Maduro sees another courtroom, but he's for sure going to be in prison possibly to the day he dies, unless he cuts like a juicy deal to where he gives up a lot of the people that he's working with. Again, I don't believe there's a cartel of the Suns, quite frankly, because they just use that as a name to designate his top military officials as terrorist, as a foreign terrorist organization. Really, that's what the cartel of Suns are. There is a lot of corruption in Venezuela. Don't get me wrong. There is corruption in Venezuela, but the cartel of the Suns was a name basically created by the United States to designate top military officials in Maduro's government. So unless he plans on giving up names, giving up who he's worked with, and those who were taking deals along with Trende Agra, I don't foresee Maduro getting out at all. Excuse me, him and his wife are both probably going to die behind bars.
Profile trials where from the beginning, the judge makes a statement that says, essentially, have no fear. We are impervious to political pressure. We will stick to the letter of the law. Process is everything. The defendants will receive a fair trial, even if we have our preconceived notions of them to begin with. So the judge here, no exception. And as you stated earlier, that the age of 92 certainly doesn't sound like it. And again, going back to the
talk about the judge's age there.
Yes, yeah. Maduro and Celia, that she has now sort of been sitting, as we said, Paul Morrow said, defeated and small appearing. But Maduro, he notes in contrast, very engaged, taking copious notes on his legal pad as these proceedings continue.
And your thoughts?
Yes, and they're saying that he is very, very engaged at the moment, and that's something that we've seen from his character going back many years. And you think back to that moment where he stood up and he said, come and get me, come and get me. Well, I think that was a result of he did not think people were coming to get him. And he saw the last administration not acting on its, on these indictments. And I think he felt that no one was going to make that move to go in and get him. Despite the military buildup in the Caribbean, despite the ships there, he felt he was protected. And he's clearly someone who likes to make his opinions heard. You remember when he got off the helicopter, he said, he turned to the journalist and he said, Happy New Year. He was talking to them. He is engaged. And I think he will use this opportunity. He must know he's spending the rest of his life in jail. The counterterrorism or the counterintelligence head of Venezuela was in indicted a few years ago, and he will presumably also be giving evidence against Maduro. So we think that there's going to be a lot of evidence against him. So look, this next year or more that this trial goes on is Maduro's last chance to really stand up and make his voice heard and try and raise up opinion, not just around the world, but also in Venezuela. He needs the Venezuelan people to hear that voice so that they don't turn quickly to the U.S. He wants to get these people on the streets of Venezuela to show support back home, or else his future is gone. His power there is gone. So he wants to keep that going as well.
You know, it's probably not the right day to get into China in all of this. I started a little bit of this conversation last hour because I'm so fascinated by the tight knitting between Iran, China, Russia, and Venezuela through its oil. And on a day when I think we can really dig into it, but I just want to get some top-line thoughts on that.
Well, very briefly, there are so many elements to this story. Of course, there's the justice we're seeing now, but there's oil as well. And many people say, oh, talk about the oil, it's a negative word. No, it's a very real word. And then the other impact is geopolitical. Look at the powers that had influence in Venezuela. Russia, China, Iran, Hezbollah, in the southern hemisphere, Cuba, they were getting stronger there.
Close to us, proximity.
Very close. And look, if you can get them out of that country, if you can free that country, if you can take advantage of its oil, that is real positive. And look, it affects the war in Ukraine as well. Russia is banking on the oil that it's getting. If you can bring oil prices down by getting this oil, that's a knock-on effect as well. There are countless positives behind this, and I think that's important. Last one is that every world leader who is corrupt, every terrorism out there is now on the back foot. They think it could be them next, and they haven't felt that till now. They could be next.
And Sandra, I know with these oil ghost ships and the routes that we didn't know about and ships with no flags and all of that, this will come out, some of those routes, and Venezuela's role in that, but it does attack the cost for Russia. And what is President Trump trying to do right now? He's trying to get Russia to come to the table for that Ukraine-Russia war deal. It's interesting. There is strategy there, is my point.
Yeah, and Russia is, many people in Russia in the last couple of days are saying what a waste the billions of dollars on Venezuela have been, because Russia has nothing to show for it. So it's creating criticism in Russia as well.
Yeah, that's actually a fair point. So now we're going to get into Marco Rubio's interview that he did with NBC News. This was conducted at Meet the Press. This was just yesterday, actually. So let's go ahead. We're about to dive on into this, and then we're gonna
Joining me now is Secretary of State Mark.
Then we're gonna go to X afterwards, because like apparently there was some there's a couple of shootings that happened today in Venezuela. So we're gonna go over to that and see what's going on with that issue.
Marco Rubio, Secretary Rubio, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I want to start with this big picture question. Is the United States now at war with Venezuela?
I got to say something. The way Rubio said thank you, he already has a disdain for NBC. A lot of the Trump administration has a disdain for NBC because like they're obviously a left-leaning news outlet that it's always against the Trump administration's best interest. So you kind of could tell why, like, he's not really that happy about being there and conducting his interview with them, because, like, of course, they're always against their policies, their agendas. But I mean, NBC could also be they could also bring up some fair points here or there. And I'm going to be completely objectively honest.
Bella.
There's not a war. I mean, we are at war against drug trafficking organizations. It's not a war against Venezuela. We are enforcing American laws with regards to oil sanctions. We have sanctioned entities. We go to court. We get a warrant. We seize those boats with oil, and that will continue. We would continue to reserve the right to take strikes against drug boats that are bringing drugs towards the United States that are being operated by transnational criminal organizations, including the cartel de los Sols. Of course, the leader of that cartel is now in U.S. custody and facing U.S. justice in the Southern District of New York, and that's Nicolas Maduro. So we made a big progress in that regard.
Mr. Secretary, who is in charge? Are you running Venezuela right now?
Yeah, I mean, I keep people, fixating on that. Here's the bottom line on it is we expect to see changes in Venezuela. Changes of all kinds, long-term, short-term. We'd love to see all kinds of changes, but the most immediate changes are the ones that are in the national interest of the United States. That's why we're involved here, because of how it applies and has a direct impact on the United States. Okay, we are not going to be able to allow in our hemisphere a country that becomes a crossroads for the activities of all of our adversaries around the world. We just can't allow it. We can't have a country where the people in charge of its military and in charge of its police department are openly cooperating with drug trafficking organizations. We're not going to allow that. These things are direct threats to the United States, and we intend to use every element of leverage that we have to ensure that changes. The one I would point everyone to is that our military is helping the Coast Guard conduct a law enforcement function, which is not just the capture of Maduro, but the enforcement of our sanctions. We go to court, we get a warrant, we seize the boats, and we think this is tremendous leverage, incredible, crippling leverage, which we intend to continue to use until we see the changes that we need to see that are benefit to the American people, and by the way, we believe to the people of Venezuela as well.
But Mr. Secretary, I think there's a lot of questions about who the point people are during this transition. President Trump said we're going to run the country. So is it you? Is it Secretary Hegseth? Who are those people who will be running the country specifically?
Good question.
Well, it's not running, it's running policy. The policy with regards to this, we want Venezuela to move in a certain direction because not only do we think it's good for the people of Venezuela, it's in our national interest. It either touches on something that's a threat to our national security or touches on something that's either beneficial or harmful.
And are you involved in that transition,
So obviously
Secretary?
I'm very involved in this. Well, of course. I mean, I think everyone knows I'm pretty involved on politics in this hemisphere. Obviously, a Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, very involved in all these elements. The Department of War plays a very important role here, along with the Department of Justice, for example, because they're the ones that have to go to court. So this is a team effort by the entire national security apparatus of our country, but it is running this policy. And the goal of the policy is to see changes in Venezuela that are beneficial to the United States, first and foremost, because that's who we work for, but also, we believe, beneficial for the people of Venezuela, who have suffered tremendously. We want a better future for Venezuela, and we think a better future for the people of Venezuela also is stabilizing for the region and makes the neighborhood we live in a much better and safer place.
President Trump said the administration is working with Maduro's Vice President, Delcy Rodriguez. Why does the administration oppose working with the opposition leader, Maria Corina Machado? She's the Nobel Peace Prize winner, of course, as well. Her coalition has the support of 70% of Venezuelans. Why not work with her?
Well, a couple things. First of all, Maria Corina Machado is fantastic, and she's someone I've known for a very long time, and the whole movement is. But we are dealing with the immediate reality. The immediate reality is that, unfortunately, and sadly, but unfortunately, the vast majority of the opposition is no longer present inside of Venezuela. We have short-term things that have to be addressed right away. We all wish to see a bright future for Venezuela, a transition to democracy. All of these things are great, and we all want to see that. I've worked on that for 15 years on a personal level, both in the Senate and now as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. These are things I still care about. We still care about. But what we're talking about is what happens over the next 2-3 weeks, 2-3 months, and how that ties to the national interest of the United States. And so we expect to see more compliance and cooperation than we were previously receiving. With Nicolas Maduro, you could not make a deal or an arrangement. Although he, by the way, was given very generous offers. He could have left Venezuela as recently as a week and a half ago. There are opportunities available for him to avoid all of this because he's not someone we can work with. He suckered the Biden administration into stupid deals. He's made a career out of not keeping deals and figuring out how to save himself by buying time. And President Trump was not going to fall into that trap. So now there are other people in charge of the military and police apparatus there. They're going to have to decide now what direction they want to go. And we hope they will choose a different direction than the one Nicolas Maduro picked. Ultimately, we hope this leads to a holistic transition all the way around in Venezuela, societal, political, all of that. We're in favor of all of that. But right now, we have to take the first steps. And the first steps are securing what's in the national interest of the United States and also beneficial to the people of Venezuela. And those are the things that we're focused on right now. No more drug trafficking, no more Iran, Hezbollah presence there, and no more using the oil industry to enrich all our adversaries around the world and not benefiting the people of Venezuela or, frankly, benefiting the United States and the region.
You talk about a holistic transition. I think there's a lot of focus on potential elections. How soon will elections be held? Within 30 days, Mr. Secretary?
Elections? Well, look, this is a country that's been governed by this regime now for 14 or 15 years. The election should have happened a long time ago. The elections did happen. They lost them, and they didn't count the votes, or they refused to count the votes, and everyone knows it. So all of that, I think, is premature at this point. There's a lot of work to be done here. Right now, what we are focused in, let's be realistic here, what we are focused on right now is all of the problems we had with when Maduro was there. We still have those problems in terms of them needing to be addressed. We are going to give people an opportunity to address those challenges and those problems. Until they address it, they will continue to face this oil quarantine. They will continue to face pressure from the United States. We will continue to target drug boats if they try to run towards the United States. We will continue to seize the boats that are sanctioned with court orders. We will continue to do that and potentially other things until the things we need to see addressed are addressed. Because ultimately, above everything else, we care about elections, we care about democracy, we care about all of that. But the number one thing we care about is the safety, security, well-being, and prosperity of the United States. And that's what we're going to focus on first and foremost here. And that's what these policies, these changes we need to see made are about.
Okay, significant there. You say you will continue to seize boats when necessary. I want to ask you about boots on the ground. A lot of attention on that. The president was asked about the possibility of U.S. boots on the ground. He said, quote, "We're not afraid of it." How many U.S. forces are on the ground right now in Venezuela? Are there any?
We don't have U.S. forces on the ground in Venezuela. No, we don't have U.S. forces on the ground. Everyone knows. They were on the ground for about 2 hours when they went to capture Maduro. And I think what the president is saying is very simple, and that is, as president of the United States, he is not going to go around telling people what he's not going to do. He's not going to go around saying, I won't do this, I won't do that. Yes, I care about this issue, but I'll only go so far. He retains all this optionality. In the particular case you're citing, this was, in essence, at its core, a law enforcement function. Okay, the Department of Justice, dating back in the Biden administration, that had a $25 million reward for his capture. So we have a reward for his capture, but we're not going to enforce it. That's the difference between President Trump and everybody else. It's easy to make a wanted poster and say $50 million for the capture of Maduro, but no one takes that seriously because you're not going to do anything about it. President Trump did something about it.
Let me ask
you. He did something about it. We went in, we grabbed him, he was arrested, and he's now in New York. No Americans were killed, no equipment was lost. It had to be done, and it's been done. And I assure you, the people left behind in
And that right there, I have to give respect to Marco Rubio for, he is right on that. We went there 2 hours, went in, got him, got out. No American lives were lost. Now, it is, like I said before, it is up for dispute about how many Venezuelan military officials were perished in this surprise attack. So that information we do not have yet at all, and it hasn't been released yet by the Venezuelan government. So we won't know anything until we get data put on. We won't know until we get like data. So until we get data, we don't know. We're just going off of their word, of course. But they could say anything to gain sympathy towards their regime, towards this little minute like mini conflict, I guess you can say, even though technically it wasn't a conflict. It was just more of a stealth operation that was successful. So we don't know as of yet exactly how many military officials have died, because like from what was reported, we only attack military sites in the bombings to distract the military officials while we go in and snag Maduro. So until we get information, all we can do is just speculate at that point, or even, or I'll go as far as to say, are they even telling the truth, or they're just saying it's just to basically gain sympathy.
Venezuela now that are in charge of the police and everything else, I assure you, they're going to probably be a lot more compliant than Maduro was as a result of this.
Well, President Trump told the New York Post there won't be troops in Venezuela as long as Delcy Rodriguez, quote, does what we want. She's already, though, demanding the release of Nicolas Maduro. As you know, she's insisting that her country never become a colony. What exactly does Rodriguez need to do to keep U.S. troops out of Venezuela?
Well, forget about the U.S. troops portion of it. What needs to happen for any of this to change, for our relations with Venezuela to change and our whole approach to it to change, the things we have talked about are the ones I've highlighted already. You can't flood this country with gang members. You can't flood this country with drugs that are coming out of Colombia through Venezuela with the cooperation of elements of your security forces. You can't turn Venezuela into the operating hub for Iran, for Russia, for Hezbollah, for China, for the Cuban intelligence agents that control that country. That cannot continue. Those things cannot continue to be in place. You cannot continue to have the largest oil reserves in the world under the control of adversaries of the United States, not benefiting the people of Venezuela and stolen by a handful of oligarchs around the world, including inside of Venezuela, but not benefiting the people of that country. We've seen how our adversaries all over the world are exploiting and extracting resources from Africa, from every other country. They're not going to do it in the Western Hemisphere. Yeah. They're not. That is not going to happen under President Trump. Read our national security strategy. He is serious about it, and he's going to do something about it, and we're doing something about it.
Let me ask you about oil. The president says the U.S. is taking over the oil. The question is, I guess, if the purpose of the operation was to capture Maduro and bring him to justice, why does the United States need to take over the Venezuelan oil industry?
Well, we don't need to. First, let me go back up. We don't need Venezuela's oil. We have plenty of oil in the United States. What we're not going to allow is for the oil industry in Venezuela to be controlled by adversaries of the United States. You have to understand, why does China need their oil? Why does Russia need their oil? Why does Iran need their oil? They're not even in this continent. This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live. And we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
Have specific oil companies?
We also want to see that oil and the proceeds from it. Hold on. We want to see the oil proceeds of that country benefit the people of Venezuela. Why have 8 million people left Venezuela? 8 million, the single largest mass migration probably in modern history, left Venezuela since 2014, because all the wealth of that country was stolen to the benefit of Maduro and his cronies in the regime, but not to the benefit of people of Venezuela. You know how destabilizing 8 million migrants is? The number one fear that Brazil has, that Colombia has, that all these countries in the region have about what's happening in Venezuela and our involvement is they're afraid of another mass migration event. That's what they fear. This is deeply destabilizing stuff. It's not going to continue to happen. They are not going to come from outside of our hemisphere, destabilize our region in our own backyard, and us have to pay the price for it. Not under President Trump.
Let's talk big picture here. U.S. regime change, historically speaking, has not gone very well for the United States. In Iraq, in Libya, to name a few examples. Can you assure Americans, the people of the United States, that this time will be different?
Good point.
Well, here's what's happened. We've got this phobia built up and this sort of thing it's like, number one, most of the experts that people have on television, I watch these experts and it's clown hour. Okay, these are people that have focused their entire career on the Middle East or some other part of the world because that's where all the action was. Very few of them know anything about Venezuela or the Western Hemisphere. Venezuela looks nothing like Libya. It looks nothing like Iraq. It looks nothing like Afghanistan. It looks nothing like the Middle East other than the Iranian agents that are running through there plotting against America. Okay, these are Western countries with long traditions among their at a people-to-people and cultural level and ties to the United States. So there's nothing like that. So I think people need to stop ascribing the apples and oranges here, the apples of the Middle East to the oranges of the Western Hemisphere. Number two, this is about the national interest of the United States. And
I have to be fair.
We are in a safer and better place because we're taking it.
I have to be fair. I do agree with him in some aspects. Just like you can't compare the both because the Middle East is a different ball game compared to the Western Hemisphere. Again, and we didn't really take out the entire regime. We already just took the leader and arrested him and brought him back for criminal charges. So I would say I would agree with him on that part that yes, people are fixated on the Middle East, and yes, it is somewhat like a long-standing phobia that's just going on in these intellectual circles that are always debating about this problem about regime change all the time that is never successful. I would argue this time this is a different type of regime change. I would even say this is a regime change. This is just a leader change, basically. This is like replacing one leader with one that's already there and already established, like the Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, and just having her take over an already built government right now and basically just work with the United States to a degree that we want them to work with us with. We want them to be able to benefit us. We want them to basically only do dealings with us. We don't want them to deal with our enemies. Our enemies are plotting against us, and the last thing we want is for them to gain an advantage on us. So I agree with Rubio in that regard.
seriously. The alternative would have been to leave Maduro there as an indicted drug trafficker, illegitimate president, running the country, open invitation for all of our adversaries to do whatever they want against the United States from Venezuela. That was not going to continue. The alternative would have been to allow a drug trafficker to continue to use national territory and elements of nation-state power to further drug trafficking organizations. Read the indictment. This guy used the levers of their security apparatus not to arrest drug traffickers, but to cooperate and facilitate the trafficking of drugs for the purpose of getting them into the United States. That's going to stop.
And yet, Mr. Secretary, a month ago, President Trump pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was just starting a 45-year sentence for trafficking more than 500 tons of cocaine. Does that not undercut the administration's stated goal, as you just said, to go after these narco-terrorists?
Number one, the former president of Honduras. So this is not someone who was in power, had any influence with the politics of Honduras any longer. Number two, I don't do the pardon file. I'm not against it or for it. I just didn't review the file. So I can't speak to you about the dynamics that led the president to make the decision that he made. I think he talked about it yesterday at the press conference. He reviewed the file. He went through the arguments in it, and he felt that the former president of Honduras was treated very unfairly by the previous administration and made the decision that he made. But I think the answer, whether you agree with that decision or not, people can disagree. I mean, there's people out there who make a living out of disagreeing with anything President Trump does. That doesn't mean you leave Maduro in place. That doesn't mean you don't go after Maduro. That's not the answer. I see people saying that. It's like, well, you know, how can you go after Maduro if you didn't do this? That's absurd. The answer to that, whether you have a problem with it or not, is not to leave in place someone who's been indicted, who hasn't even faced American justice yet, but now will.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I was referencing, obviously, the former president. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles told Vanity Fair that an attack on Venezuela's mainland would require approval from Congress. Why didn't that happen, and will it happen with any future action the administration plans to take in Venezuela or elsewhere?
This was not an action that this was not an action that required congressional approval. In fact, it couldn't require congressional approval because this was not an invasion. This is not an extended military operation. This was a very precise operation that involved a couple of hours of action. It was a very delicate operation too. It was one that required all these conditions to be in place at the right time in the right place. You couldn't afford leaks. We couldn't afford anything out there that would have endangered the mission and gotten people killed or killed off the mission in the optionality. We didn't even know if the mission was going to happen. How can you notify something you're not even sure if it can happen? Because in order for it to happen, you needed to have weather conditions in place. He needed to be at the right place at the right time. We needed to have forces prepared to go. There were a lot of factors in place. It was a trigger-based operation. You can't.
Yeah, they did say that's the reason, one of the main reasons why this didn't come about sooner, because they said this was supposed to take place before New Year's Eve. Actually, it's supposed to take place, I think, around Christmas time. But weather conditions prevented them from actually executing this operation. That's why they waited till just recently, a couple of days ago, just to go ahead and commence on this operation. So it's a successful one too at that. So they did wait around for the right time, basically till the weather permitted, so that way they can execute it without fault. And I will give them that. Like, this was successful as hell. Like, you cannot call it anything other than the fact that it was a successful operation. Like, people may sit up here and you got some people that are protesting Maduro's arrest and saying that, hey, why did we arrest a Democratic elect leader, even though it's disputed about his democratically being elected? Why did we go in there and commit a regime change, the poor people of Venezuela, when the Venezuelans in the streets in America over here are saying they are happy that happened? They're happy that Maduro left, because majority of them, if not all of them that are here in America that are Venezuelan, are because of Maduro. So I mean, I don't know, generally that's why I always say, like, liberals are just stupid, bro. They have no actual awareness of, like, what's going on the actual ground. Like, people in Venezuela hated Maduro. They wanted him overthrown. And now they're wondering why there hasn't been a single Venezuelan that come out in support of Maduro. Like, everyone's right now is going against the liberals in America and saying that you're celebrating a literal dictator who's the reason why we're here in America. And it just goes to show you, like, the liberals have no social awareness about what's really going on. They're sitting here going against the United States government for executing the Monroe Doctrine successfully at that, and us spreading and keeping our sphere of influence strong in our hemisphere. Like, they're mad at Trump for doing that. Like, imagine that. And that just goes to show you that a bigger question, a bigger problem that we have in America, that there are people that live in this country that are just fundamentally not America. They're not for America's best interests. They're just about hurting America. They're not. We just have to have that tough conversation that we have people in America that are just not for America's best interests.
notify that, number one, because you don't even know what's going to happen if those conditions will ever align, and number two, you can't risk it being disclosed. But this was not an attack on Venezuela. This was a law enforcement function to capture an indicted drug trafficker, and of course, we needed the Department of War to support it because they do have anti-aircraft missiles that could shoot down those helicopters.
But will you?
We had to take down radars, we had to take down those anti-air elements on the way in and on the way out, and that's what this was limited to.
But will you seek congressional approval for any further action in Venezuela or the region?
Well, we will seek congressional approval for actions that require congressional approval. But otherwise, they will get congressional notification. And this is not an operation that requires congressional approval. In fact, this is an operation akin to what virtually every single president for the last 40 years has conducted. The difference is that when it's Donald Trump, all these Democrats go bonkers.
Is the Cuban government the Trump administration's next target, Mr. Secretary? Very quickly.
Well, the Cuban government is a huge problem. Yeah, the Cuban government is a huge problem. First of all,
is that a yes?
Cuba, but I don't think people fully appreciate. I think they're in a lot of trouble. Yes, I'm not going to.
I would also say we need to really target Mexico. Like the cartel, where Trump said this, I think it was yesterday. He said that Mexico is a very big problem. The cartel runs the country. He basically destroyed Shinbam. Called her, basically said, you don't even run your own country. I think I pronounce her name Shinbam or Shinbam. I believe it's Shinbam. So Shinbam doesn't even run her own country. And she's not in control of a country. It's ruled by the cartels. And he says that we need to go up there and probably clean your problem too. That's why we're keeping an eye on you next. So I agree 100% that we do need to go to Mexico and clean up this problem because that's where a majority of the drugs are actually coming from. This is just the Monroe Doctrine, and it's just to ensure that oil is coming to the United States. So this is what this is about. This is kind of why there are some people that are kind of mad because the Trump administration is basically lying to their faces, telling them it's about drugs, when in reality, it's about the oil.
Talk to you about what our future steps are going to be and our policies are going to be right now in this regard. But I don't think it's any mystery that we are not big fans of the Cuban regime, who, by the way, are the ones that were propping up Maduro. His entire internal security force, his internal security apparatus is entirely controlled by Cubans. One of the untold stories here is how, in essence, you talk about colonization, because I think you said Delphi Rodriguez mentioned that. The ones who have sort of colonized, at least inside the regime, are Cubans. It was Cubans that guarded Maduro. He was not guarded by Venezuelan bodyguards. He had Cuban bodyguards. In terms of their internal intelligence, who spies on who inside to make sure there are no traitors, those are all Cubans.
All right. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, thank you for joining us after an incredibly busy 48 hours. Really appreciate it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News.
Yeah, Maduro definitely has somebody in his regime that betrayed him.
Or watch live on our YouTube channel.
That's the only reason why they were able to execute this so effortlessly without any problems, because they obviously had someone in the regime there that was working with the Trump administration, or basically paid off to work with the Trump administration to basically betray Maduro and to also let them know, hey, he's going to be in bed around this time, and to also basically just give them the heads up about what's going on, like what are the security detail like, who's with him 24/7, like how does he eat, sleep, pretty much all of his daily activities. There was somebody around in his inner circle that know him 100%, and they were able to give viable and good details back to the Trump administration. So I would give it a successful A++. I mean, it's a successful operation. There's nothing really you could say about that. So this happened today. Heavy gunfire is occurring right now around Mari Flores Palace in Caracas, Venezuela, the seat of the government. Something's going on. As you can hear in the distance, there's a bunch of gunfire going off. Small arms or anti-aircraft fire heard in Caracas, Venezuela.
No me jodas, no me jodas. No me jodas.
All right, as you can see right there, this is from Nick Sorter. So this is an update from earlier reports about that gunfire. So update, Uncle Phone reports state that the Venezuelan government mistook their own drone for an enemy drone. That's crazy. All right, which triggered a barrage of anti-aircraft fire. Once the friendly drone got a little too close to the presidential palace, forces reacted. I agree. Wow, lame-o. That was insane. So this is one's from Dom Luker. So this has nothing to do with that previous incident, but this is kind of like, this is very interesting. So as you can see, as the caption reads, developing Call of Duty Ghost PC game, which was released 12 years ago, is going viral after fans realized it came out when Venezuela Maduro started his presidency, and in the game, the U.S. military raids Venezuela at night and captured the Venezuelan dictator in the year 2026. Wow. This is insane, bro. The coincidence that games sometimes predict the future, or like media, like TV shows and movies can predict the future, is crazy. Let's watch.
Okay. Venezuela was already foretold to us. In this Call of Duty, the United States sent special forces in order to take over the dictator of Venezuela. Caracas, Venezuela, to be exact. But this is where it gets crazy. Pay attention. This Call of Duty came out 12 years ago. Want to know what else happened 12 years ago? Nicolas Maduro started his presidency 12 years ago. Look at the opening scene to the final act. Rourke was a legend. A man could walk through hell. They based the game 12 years in the past. Is that...
So what that goes on quite a bit longer, but it's kind of irrelevant. Call of Duty Ghosts is set in 12 years in the future from now, and at the start of the game it says 12 years previous, and it shows America invading and overthrowing Venezuela, which is right now. So again, is that just coincidence number 5? A bit longer, but it's kind of
Let me
irrelevant.
go ahead and repeat it right quick. I'll turn on full screen for you guys.
It's kind of irrelevant. Call of Duty Ghosts is set in 12 years in the future from now, and at the start of the game it says 12 years previous, and it shows America invading and overthrowing Venezuela, which is right now. So again, is that just coincidence number 5? Okay.
That was insane, bro. That was insane. I wanted to show you guys that right quick. That's just a little fun little video at the end. So we covered a lot today. We have 4 stories to cover. We covered the Venezuela story. Again, another one. Maduro appeared in court today, said he was not guilty. Then we watched the Marco Rubio interview from Meet the Press the other day, where he goes over how they executed this. Also basically saying people still got to get over this like phobia of like past regime change missions that happen in the Middle East, and basically bringing up a good point that Venezuela is not in the Middle East, is in the Western Hemisphere, is in the Americas. So people have got to get out this notion that just because regime change happened, which happened disastrously, 100% agree with all those sentiments, that it happened disastrously in all those Middle Eastern countries, to where we destabilize the countries to where they never truly recovered. But this wasn't like that, basically 100%, because no one died. No one on our side, of course, and we only from confirmed reports, even though they still haven't provided data, we've killed only military personnel in the Venezuelan government. So that's pretty much all who actually were harmed, and we managed to get Maduro without actually losing American lives. It only took 2 hours to do this operation. So, and then we also covered JD Vance basically being attacked by some leftist Antifa like Transformer, of course. These people are always not being the stereotypes that they're so violent. Then we talked about Tim Walz stepping down. He's conceding his re-election bid for governor. It was getting, the pressure got to him too much. And then we also spoke about the Iranian protest that happened, and it's currently still going on right now. So as more stuff comes out about the Iranian protests, I'm gonna constantly give you guys updates about that. We're gonna probably cover a little bit more about it tomorrow on the chill stream, where we're gonna talk about we're going to continue watching the video about the currency to give you guys a complete understanding about how currency in Iran works, and how it's basically funds the militia groups, and also does trading along with other Middle Eastern countries as well, and how this definitely does impact Iran's future and it's long standing right now, and how it's going to lead to the Iranian people to overthrow the current regime right now, as I predict. I mean, it might change over time, but right now, my current prediction is the regime all its days are numbered, and they're probably going to get overthrown by the people at some point. And then there's going to be a puppet leader going to come in, Reza Pahlavi is going to probably be put in power. So, but anyways, I'll be back tomorrow again for my chill stream tomorrow. It's going to probably be the only chill stream of the week. And then my regular show is going to be Monday, as you know, today, Wednesday, and Friday, Tonight in America. We'll cover news and politics on here. So I'll be back tomorrow for chill stream, and then Wednesday I'll be back, of course, for my usual show. Talk more about politics and see what's going on. If more breaking news comes out throughout the week, we're going to cover it, of course. And then Friday. And then maybe I might stream Saturday, maybe Friday, Saturday or Sunday, depending. Might do a true crime on Sunday, depending on how I feel. But I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I'll see you on the next one.